As we turned, the world encompassing us blurred slightly along its edges, as though the night itself understood the clandestine nature of what it was to harbor the burgeoning within and beyond. And on that walk back, the chuckle shared became the unscripted propriety we inhabited, a tether strengthened silently. Together we strode purposefully, our course set by a path partially known and partially forged anew. Ideas flitted with the ocean spray, soundless yet undeniably present, echoing silently over the waning breath of night's retreat. And as we reached the torchlit gathering once more, the laughter and the shallow conversation, an orchestra of shadowed intent and spoken dances. One thought pervaded, insistent yet quietly powerful, undeniably prescient. "I choose this moment, and the next," I murmured aloud, binding each word to the swirling tapestry of fate with a focused certainty that sat nestled comfortably between my chest and heart, waiting patiently for the dawn to discover its next breath. Chapter 28. A Test of Trust. "Why didn't you tell me sooner, James?" The question hung between us like a humid mist that the ocean breeze could not quite dispel, its weight sinking into the finely grained wood of the veranda. James turned his back to the sea, where the horizon seemed to curve ever so slightly toward another world. He sighed, a subtle tremor beneath the steadfast cadence of his breath, and for a moment the air was thick with unsaid truths. Around us, the symphony of the island continued unperturbed. The gentle whisper of palm fronds, the rhythmic lull of waves kissing the shore, the distant caw of seabirds charting their leisurely course against a cobalt sky. All conspired to belie the tension coiling between us, unspoken words simmering with a promise of consequence. "I thought I had," he replied, his voice a study in restraint, the kind that comes when one has spent a lifetime guarding secrets. He met my gaze then, those dark eyes carrying the depth of uncharted oceans. "But some things," he continued, his words sifting through the silence like the finest grains of sand, "are easier shown than said." The truth was, I had known all along, felt it in the careful deliberation of his touch, in the solemnity behind his rare smiles. Yet the mind, even mine sharpened by intellect and tempered by caution, often cloaks itself in denial, preferring comfort over confrontation. "What are you afraid of, Sheila?" His question, though asked with gentle intention, sparked a quiet rebellion within me. Not against him, but against the version of myself still tethered to vows that had long since unraveled in the confines of a marriage that felt more like a well-appointed cage. I turned towards the horizon, seeking solace, perhaps even answers, in the endless breadth of sea and sky. The salt-laden breeze tangled in my hair, a gentle reminder of where I stood, and with whom. James, a man whose complexity and command both unsettled and steadied me. "I'm afraid of forgetting who I used to be," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper, yet the truth of it echoed across the vastness before us. "Of losing myself somewhere I won't be found." James stepped closer, his presence a steadying force. Not touch, but the nearness of understanding. "Perhaps, Sheila, what's truly frightening is the possibility of finding a self you never knew existed." The rumble of distant thunder resounded, a reminder of how volatile the elements could be, like the storms of emotions brewing within me. Yet here, within the shelter of this island world and this complex connection, I sensed the probability of transformation, of the uncertain becoming the extraordinary. "What if I lose you in the process?" I asked, unable to disguise the fear wrapped around this fragile hope. He paused, the spaces between his breaths laden with significance. "This isn't about losing or keeping, Sheila," he said, finally. "It's about becoming, together." The tremor of his voice, though slight, carried the weight of certainty. It was then that I understood the profound depth of his unspoken vow, a promise layered with the complexities of his heritage and the untold stories carried within him, which I might never completely unravel. "Trust me," he implored, his eyes reaching into mine, seeking something beyond the surface. It was an invitation not just into his world, but into a shared future crafted amidst secrets and revelations. The rustling of nearby foliage reminded me of how life persisted, even amidst uncertainty. Every leaf, despite its tender fragility, dared to flourish, reaching for sunlight with unwavering faith. Perhaps I too could stretch beyond past confines, daring to embrace new beginnings. "I want to," I replied, the slow, careful articulation of those words allowing my heart to catch up with my resolve. The burgeoning quiet between us was rich with anticipation, a canvas upon which possibilities were painted. I sensed the magnitude of what lay unuttered, his royal lineage, our potential destiny, and it filled me not with fear, but with an awed peace. A peace that could only emerge from a decision made not in haste, but in harmony with one's true self. He turned, extending his hand, a simple gesture, yet profound in its implications. I looked at him, my choice mirrored back in his patient eyes, the sea's endless expanse our witness. As I placed my hand in his, a gentle current of assurance swept over me. His fingers curled around mine with a tenderness that belied the strength within, speaking volumes more than words could ever capture. We stood there, enfolded in a promise unspoken, but inherently understood. In that moment, amid the lush embrace of island life, I found a semblance of truth within myself. A truth that transcended the confines of past allegiances, speaking to the promise of redemptive love and newfound freedom. It was not about being rescinded from past shadows, but stepping into the light of what could be, with trust as my compass and James as my guide. With a soft murmur more felt than heard, I whispered my newly claimed freedom. Together, then. It was a beginning, not an end. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and gold, I knew unequivocally that amidst the intricate dance of love and truth, becoming together was the only journey that mattered. Chapter 29. Delving deeper. Salt mingles with the humid air, windswept palms swaying like dancers along the shoreline. The horizon stretches in endless shades of indigo, a soft glow hinting at the sun's late descent into evening. This island, with its whispers of untouched beauty, mirrors my own silent metamorphosis, each grain of sand an anchor grounding me to a decision I dared not voice until now. I trace the undulating silhouette of the shoreline, the ebb and flow a rhythmic counterpart to the tumult within my chest. I find peace here, amidst the restless pull of tides and the fragrant embrace of blooming hibiscus bushes. Their bright petals, bold against the verdant backdrop, reflect a vibrancy I yearn to reclaim in my own life. James stands under the watchful gaze of a sprawling acacia, its branches twisted and full, providing a natural canopy as he examines a collection of shells scattered across a weather-beaten table. His focus, intense and singular, is an exquisite dance of concentration and ease. I approach cautiously, conscious of my heartbeat, which seems amplified by the island's symphonic quiet. James's eyes lift, catching my gaze with the precision of an artist selecting the perfect hue. And a faint smile plays on his lips. Not prescriptive, but a gentle acknowledgement of understanding that lies between us, like an unspoken covenant. "Did you find what you were looking for?" I ask, my words curling into the heavy, sweetened air. Each sound wades against the natural symphony, nothing drowned out by the rhythmic percussion of waves. James lifts a particularly iridescent shell, its surface shimmering with secrets of the deep. "Beauty has a tendency to hide where patience lives," he replies, his voice low yet resonant. A soothing balm to my lingering anxieties. The words hang delicately between us. We both sense the veiled implications. A nod to the unfurling truth of our own connection, something subdued, promising yet inherently wild. As he sets the shell amongst the others, fingers brushing lightly over the coarse tabletop, I map the familiar contours of his hands, those capable hands that have wielded trust and revelation with equal measure. There is a distinct comfort in the juxtaposition of his gentleness and the grounded strength within him, like the earth's solid underfoot, despite the ocean's determined advance. "How did you know?" I question, my voice betraying the earnest falter of someone who has always wavered between choices laid out by others. He pauses, his eyes skimming the horizon, beguiled by myriad possibilities. "Knowing tends not to announce itself," he answers. "It offers glimpses, small assurances that align over time. Yet it's always a leap of faith." James feeds on mysteries, thriving on the challenge they present, not to conquer, but to understand. I admire this about him, his unyielding quest for truth, overshadowed only by his subtle insistence on preserving the sanctity of it. He never simplifies, never diminishes, and in his presence, I too feel expansive, capable of reaching out beyond the confines once imposed upon me. We fall into a companionable silence, the island braced around us with untold stories buried in its soil. I venture a step closer, feeling the gritty sand bind to the soles of my bare feet, still tethered, yet strikingly unbound. The rustling leaves overhead whisper their own narrative, one I desperately long to decipher. "Have you ever felt as though you are both the prisoner and the warden?" I ask, compelled by conversations buried deep within countless unsaid words. James turns, an unstudied elegance in the movement that betrays a history rooted in grace. His features, drawn in contemplation, soften as understanding lights his gaze. "Every day," he answers, and in his admission there is a kind of liberation. "Every day I choose which chains to wear." The prospect terrifies and electrifies in equal measure. To choose one's bindings, to voluntarily weave them from strands of hope and duty. The paradox exists not in the choice itself, but in the subsequent quest for freedom within those confines. Together we become architects of fortresses and sanctuaries, same materials, differing intents. "If we are our own captors," I begin softly, "then surely we have within us the power to redefine liberation." He watches me, eyes glinting with the discovery of something unstirred until now. "Is that what you want? To redefine?" I hesitate, sifting through the sounds around us for guidance, a calling sequestered amongst the crashing waves and whispered winds. "I want to be more than an echo of someone else's desires, James," I confess, feeling the weight of my admission dissolve in the mist surrounding us. "I want to resonate in my truth." His nod is subtle, deliberate, an acknowledgement not of uncertainty, but of my resolution. "Then we must delve deeper, take ownership of our narratives," he replies. Thus we stand, two solitary figures on the cusp of understanding, staring at the horizon not for what it holds, but for what it promises. It is a commitment to learn each other, to permit our thoughts to deepen roots. The air shifts, and for a moment it is not just salt and blooms that fill the space between us, but potential and redefined belonging, a choice anew. As James steps forward, closing the void between us, he extends an open hand. I take it, feeling the familiar play of assurance in his touch. Together, we face the unfurling night, a tapestry woven from the day's departures and nightfall's enduring mystery. We are our own compasses now, and I find myself drawn to the adventure inherent in the navigation, trusting the map we've yet to construct. "I guess it's true," I whisper, emboldened by the dusk's reassuring darkness. "True treasures hide where patience lives." His eyes hold mine, and together we listen, not just to the murmur of the island, but to each other. "And where truth breathes life into every choice thereafter," he finishes, a promise riding the gentle sea breeze. And in the quiet, There remains only the night, swelling with the sound of an ocean giving its benediction. Chapter 30, Revelation of Royalty. I had often wondered what it might feel like to step from the shadow of a lie into the harsh, scrutinous light of truth. Would it sear, cauterize the fragile tendrils of my heartstrings, or would it illuminate the dark caverns where doubt lurked for all these years? The azure waves danced against a sugar-white sands, their rhythmic whispers a soothing balm to my racing thoughts. I found myself perched on the edge of the terrace, fingers lightly tracing the cool stone surface. My thoughts were interrupted as James approached, his figure a silhouette against the sun's fading glow. His presence had always been an anchor, yet now felt like the gathering storm. The air between us crackled with unsaid things, truths that teetered on the brink of revelation. Silence, potent and weighted, settled like mist around us. A gentle breeze tousled the leaves of the palm trees, their rustling akin to the whispering of spectral confessions. I turned to face him, the man whose mysteries had adorned the walls of my imaginings, much like the art he so meticulously curated. My eyes searched his, a dance of uncertainty and burgeoning trust mirrored back. "Sheila," he murmured, breaking the stillness. In that single utterance was a tapestry of emotions, a plea for understanding, and the preface to upheaval. His gaze bore into mine, sincerity etching lines of vulnerability across his features. For a moment, words escaped me. Only a nod acknowledged his silent request. He drew a breath, the rise and fall of his chest a testament to the gravity of what he was about to unveil. The sun descended further, soaking the world in hues of amber and crimson, the scene painted by a celestial artist with a penchant for drama. "I'm not who you think I am," he began, carefully selecting each word as though they were pieces of an intricate mosaic. His hand twitched toward mine, hovered for the briefest of instances before retreating, understanding the sanctity of space. I mirrored him, wanting nothing more than to bridge the distance, yet needing the truth unsanctified by proximity. "What do you mean?" My voice held a tremor, a ripple disturbing the calm surface of an ocean. He stepped closer, tendrils of dusk weaving between us. "I'm heir to something far beyond art, to a legacy hidden and sacred." The statement lay between us, heavy and immovable. The royal lineage, it was fantastical, surreal. And what does this mean for us? The emphasis on the final word was unintentional, yet revealing. James's expression softened, complexity shadowing his eyes. "It means choices, Sheila, for both of us." Memories of shared glances and unspoken promises flickered at the periphery of my mind. "Then tell me," I said, seeking clarity in the storm. "What do you see our choices leading us to?" His silence was profound, each second a testament to a struggle that was as internal as it was external. Slowly, he reached for my hand, the touch as light as the grazing of a butterfly's wing, yet imbued with unyielding strength. "Choices," he repeated, "like ripples, they extend beyond us." His connection to a royal lineage did not surprise me. It fit the mosaic of contradictions that made up James Carter. Simultaneously an art curator and a royal figure, a confluence of elegance and power. Yet here we stood, just two individuals at the convergence of truths and possibilities. His fingers remained entwined with mine, a lifeline cast amid swirling uncertainties. Again, silence settled, yet it was a different kind, soft and almost companionable, as if the truth had diluted some of the tension. Through the deepening twilight, our eyes remained locked. The quiet understanding of our shared predicament emerged, a silent accord between two souls navigating the delicate art of revelation. His world, now unmasked, beckoned no simple resolution. "Sheila," he spoke again, his voice thin threads woven into the dusk. "Whatever path you choose, know that my respect for you, he paused, as if the next word might tip the scales from pretense to reality. I felt the tender severity of his admission hanging in the air. In that moment, I realized, while his heritage may cast long shadows, it was the sincerity of his present engagement that illuminated our narrative. "I know," I whispered, a fluidity of emotions cracking my voice ever so slightly. The assurance was mutual, a tacit understanding of solidarity in newfound vulnerability. Together, we watched as the day surrendered to night, the horizon a tapestry of starlit promises. Wherever this revelation might lead, I knew it was the beginning both of an ending and a tale still to be told, one where choice and consequence were the sole artists. As silence reclaimed its dominion, our future lay still unwritten, yet infinitely possible, a canvas only bound by the breadth of the sea before us and the depth of the sky above. His final words resounded in the spaces of my heart, a promise and a challenge wrapped into one. "With courage, then," he said softly, his eyes shining with a faith that intertwined with my own. And in that shared resolve, I discovered not just the strength of his lineage, but the undeniable power of our union. As we stood, rooted in both revelation and possibility, I could almost hear the echoes of our imagined futures whispering in the wind, calling us forward. Together, Sheila, no matter the path. The curtain of night descended fully, and for the first time, I felt its embrace not as an ending, but as a beginning, an open canvas. Chapter 31. Running from Reality. "I've always known there's more to you," James said, his gaze drifting beyond me, to the seascape laid beneath the vast horizon. The gentle resonance of the ocean lapped at the shore, each wave curling in with a subtle promise before retreating with secrets of its own, whispering to the sand. The sun was exhaling its final golden light, infusing the horizon with a spectrum of hues, pinks, oranges, and soft purples bleeding into one another with the languor of an unhurried artist. I drew a breath, inhaling the scent of salt and possibilities, and glanced back at James. His silhouette, bathed in the twilight, exuded a serene command, a contradiction to the tempest inside me. "More to me?" I repeated, wishing the question to hang between us untainted by second-guessing. His statement was both an accusation and an invitation, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to explore either. He nodded, his silence embracing the space between us, speaking volumes where words couldn't reach. His presence was magnetic, the quiet force field that had been drawing me steadily away from my anchored life. I felt my pulse quicken, a rhythmic throb of tension mingled with anticipation. Its isolation, draped in the richness of tropical vegetation, was compounded by the song of cicadas that filled the approaching night. The air was heavy with the sweetness of hibiscus and the distant scent of the storm carried by the sea breeze, tangible yet elusive. Amidst this beauty, my heart ached with its own dissonance. "James, I don't know what you're offering," I admitted, my voice just above a whisper, as if uttering it aloud would deepen the chasm. He finally turned to me, his gaze soft yet piercing, and something within him shifted. "What do you want me to offer, Sheila?" His question was deceptively simple, and yet it laid bare my innermost conflict. What did I want? Was I ready to abandon the structures of my life, the promises and bindings I had accepted, for the uncertain promise of joy I sensed in his presence? I turned away, letting the ocean draw my thoughts into a gentle ebb and flow. The water's edge beckoned, a symbolic boundary between my past and the uncharted territory of the heart. "I want." The sentence clung to the back of my throat, burdened by what felt like a lifetime of hesitation and duty. I could see him in my periphery, waiting with patient intensity. I wanted truth. I wanted this to mean something more than the sum of our secrets. If only I could disentangle want from need, perhaps then I could speak the words that would bridge the distance between us. He moved then, stepping closer, his shadow intermingling with mine, and an unspoken bond tethered us in the growing darkness. "Do you trust me?" he finally asked, breaking the silence that swathed us. His voice contained a gentle urgency, each word measured, as if he understood that my answer was a scaffolding for whatever came next. Did I trust him? The man with a royal lineage veiled behind his identity as an art curator? The man who had, over recent weeks, woven himself into the very sinews of my being? I hesitated, yet found myself nodding, a movement as instinctive as breath. Yes, it was a soft confession, one that illuminated the path forward as surely as the moonlight now shimmered on the ocean's surface. James reached for my hand, his touch grounding me as much as it set my spirit soaring. He was real. This island, our shared deception, our unspoken truths, each element suffused with a poignant vivacity that had become my haven. Then come with me, he urged, his voice as commanding as the tide. I felt the strength it took for him to extend this invitation, a strength tempered with vulnerability. I hesitated. Would letting go bring liberation or loss? The tempest of my past was a daunting specter, yet here was this man, a beacon against the storm, who saw in me a potential I had long since buried. Away from this island? I asked, a seed of doubt growing in the fertile soil of uncertainty. Further in, he replied, gesturing towards the interior of the island. His eyes bore into mine with an earnest depth that stirred something once dormant within me. The choice was mine. It always had been. His offer was not of escape, but of revelation. Could I face what lay beyond the facade, uncover the truths entwined with the secrets of both our lineages, and move beyond them? I've spent so long living in shadows, I admitted, grappling with the enormity that hung in the air. Maybe, just maybe, this was the light I had been seeking. James's gaze softened, and I understood that he too had spent years in the half-light, shaping himself amidst contradictions. His truth was as layered as my own. Our unison was not built upon revelations, but upon the gradual weaving of shared understanding. I'll follow you, I decided, emphasizing each word, letting them sear into the essence of twilight. The beloved solitude I once sought was now replete with the life James breathed into my existence. Together we stepped away from the boundary of the beach, leaf-strewn paths winding ahead of us, the underbrush rustling in whispered welcome. With each footfall, secrets we had once guarded transformed into fragments of understanding. We walked, leaving behind the coastline where my sense of self had been stationed, embarking deeper into the velvet shadow of the island's forest. In the obscurity beneath a canopy swathed in the gleaming promise of moonlight, I felt the thrill of discovery, a beat slow yet resolute. There, amid nature's embrace, beyond the artifice that had bound us both, I began to comprehend that liberation wasn't in the severance of ties, but in the forging of new paths, those threaded with equal parts of fear and hope. The night deepened, stars pinpointing the expanse of black, and though darkness lay ahead, the warmth of his hand promised to light our way. Nearer now, the symphony of cicadas lulled the fear of reality, blending the waking dreams of what could be with the steady cadence of the heartbeats that had chosen more. And in that tender unfolding, I realized that I was no longer running from reality, but towards a life that, however uncertain, was undeniably my own. Chapter 32. Holding On. The morning light gossamered through the sheer linen curtains, spectral rays tracing their translucent fingers across the polished wooden floor. I stood in the kitchen, a pot of rich aromatic coffee simmering on the stove, the scent spooling upward and curling like an invitation around the beams of sunshine. The act of making coffee had become a ritual, an anchor that grounded me in this island reality, each swirl of my spoon a silent testament to the complexity of our current dance. James was seated at the table, his gaze trained intently on the sea beyond the open patio doors, his expression lost in the horizon's eternal promise. The gentle rush of the ocean seemed to mirror the swirling eddies of my thoughts, both relentless and soothing. He shifted slightly, the chair creaking a soft protest, yet his eyes remained fixed, seeing worlds invisible to me. "Milk? Sugar?" I asked, my voice a gentle intrusion into his reverie. He tilted his head ever so slightly, acknowledging the question but not yet ready to answer, caught between the veil of his contemplation and the present conversation. And what if you reach one day and the horizon isn't as expected? I asked, my voice a soft echo of the query in my heart, both a query and a benediction. That's the charm of it, isn't it? He smiled, his gaze locking with mine, anchoring me. Without the pursuit of horizons, we would stand still. It was a thought that tasted bittersweet on my tongue, the idea of relentless pursuit, the restlessness woven into our joint narrative, marked by so many untold truths and the promises they threatened to fracture. His shift to unexpected vulnerability surfaced without warning. Do you ever fear that one day you might see through me? Thinly veiled anxiety cloaked his usual commanding demeanor. The unexpectedness of his admission caught me off guard, a wild tang like an off note in a symphony. Silence enveloped us, but it was a different kind of silence, the soothing kind that cushions confessions rather than accentuates them. I don't see that as a fear, I replied gently, but as a freedom. I let the words drape over us, seeing their effect ripple across his features, softening the tension that had kept him rigid. In the quiet that followed, a stillness descended, connecting us with bonds more resilient than any words might forge. Our gaze became the canvas where we painted our hopes and hesitations, an unspoken understanding that this shared moment rendered all else irrelevant. As if the world beyond the island's golden sands were merely an echo receding into memory, bright but diminishing. The afternoon stretched languidly around us, the sun climbing higher into its zenith, a benevolent overseer to our shared solitude. I felt an invisible cord tug at my thoughts, whispering of places long untouched within me, imploring recognition. This quiet moment, held in stasis, seemed like a promise all its own, the implicit understanding that whatever lay ahead would be anchored by the constancy of here, now. At last, James spoke, a quiet resolution wrapping around his words. Whatever happens, Sheila, understand this, he said with gravity. To me, you've become the horizon, the journey worth every endeavor. It was a pronouncement wrapped in a vow unspoken, yet deeply etched, every echo in his voice a reverb of the trust built between us. As the syllables faded into the comforting thrum of the sea beyond, I was struck by the profound simplicity of what lay beneath his words. Without any map to guide us, no divining of the fate awaiting us, this quiet moment became an anchor, a promise illumined by possibility, reflecting in his eyes and resounding across the open sky. And so we held on, to each other, to the hallowed silence, and the affirming promise of all that might come. Chapter 33, Whispers Between Shadows. There's a particular grace in the way moonlight filters through the fronds of palm trees, casting dappled shadows that ripple with the gentle breeze. On the private island, the night hummed with the symphony of cicadas, each note a gentle reminder of the serenity cloaking our temporary sanctuary. I found myself amidst this tranquility, slipping my feet into the warm sand, its grains a comforting texture beneath my toes. Yet each step carried the unshakable weight of decisions yet to be made. The task at hand was simple enough, rolling up the edges of an old, worn-out picnic blanket we'd brought earlier to watch the sunset. It seemed now, as I carefully folded each corner with deliberate precision, that this mundane act was laden with something far more profound. It was a ritual of sorts, has heralded the end of countless days in this paradise. And yet tonight, it felt different, as if each crease held the whispered promises of uncharted futures. I glanced sidelong at James, who stood a little distance away, his silhouette framed by the dim, silvery glow. The breeze caught his shirt, a soft linen number that danced around him like an unattainable aura. He turned toward me, and even in the obscuring shadows, the intensity of his eyes was palpable. It was a glance that was heavy with unspoken histories, a connection sparked by chance meetings and reinforced by stolen, treasured moments. "Ready to head back?" he asked, his voice carrying the gravity of more than just the simple question. His presence was commanding, a constant reassuring force amidst the uncertainty that had become my daily companion. "Almost," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady despite the swirling emotions within. I reached for the bottle of wine, its glass cool and sleek against my fingers, every sensation heightened as if to imprint this night into my memory. "I just thought we could savor the quiet a little longer." He nodded, and the briefest touch of his hand on mine as he took the bottle was electric yet subtle. The potential for more hung in the air between us, palpable in the subtlest sweep of his thumb against the back of my hand. An inadvertent gesture, perhaps, but one that lingered, interwoven with the fragrance of the ocean and the jasmine that perfumed the night. Side by side, we began to walk along the shoreline, the crashing of each wave a metronome for our unhurried steps. The water lapped close to our feet, its cool edge a stark contrast to the warmth we radiated together. With every step, I felt an unfolding within myself, layers peeling back to reveal facets that had long been buried beneath dutiful roles and quiet resignations. "The stars are brighter here," I said softly, eyes lifted to the expansive vault above. "Or maybe it's just that there's less between them and us." "Less barriers," James mused, his voice tinged with contemplative warmth, the embodiment of one who understood the struggle between obligations and desires. "Sometimes it's the space between things that really matters." His words carried a resonance that matched the gentle ebb of the tide, and I felt a tightening in my chest, not from fear or indecision, but from the shared understanding of what lay beneath the polished surface of our arranged charade. In James's company, I found a version of myself I hadn't known I missed, a self softened by laughter, yet fortified by the strength he so effortlessly inspired. Our journey up the slope to the bungalow was a study in unspoken companionship, the cadence of our steps a private rhythm only we could perceive. As we reached the top, he paused, the weight of introspection in his pause, as he turned to face me within the soft, embracing dark. "There's something freeing about the truth, isn't there?" His voice was rich with a vulnerability that dared to be exposed, his eyes two luminous pools catching the scant moonlight. "Yes," I conceded, my voice almost swallowed by the night, "but also terrifying." "Terrifying," he agreed, a small smile playing on the curve of his lips, an echo of shared fears and dreams brushed aside with a gentle confidence. "But necessary." We stood there, time suspended in the cradle of our gazes, silence laced with a myriad of things unsaid, yet inherently understood. The protective facade we had crafted was a fragile thing, underpinned by the real feelings that had quietly flourished beneath. The promise of what we could become loomed closer, a burgeoning question that demanded eventual acknowledgement. In the soft glow filtering through the open windows, the bungalow was a sanctuary of quiet and warmth, awaiting our return. The elegant lines of the furniture betrayed design choices made for balance, much like James himself, a juxtaposition of opulence and grounded honesty. Sinking into the familiarity of the room, I moved towards the shelf where we kept our handwritten notes, fragments of our fabricated engagement, alongside candid expressions of shared hopes. As I brushed a fingertip across the grain of the wood, the reality of our bond surged forward in a quiet epiphany. His voice drew me back, a tether in the midnight ether. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." He stood by the window now, the ocean lost in the darkness beyond, but its presence audible in his tone. His profile was that of a gentle monolith, carved by the forces he had weathered with resolute dignity. "What's that?" I ventured, every fiber alive with anticipation. Turning to me, the sincerity in his eyes was an anchor, a promise in itself. "You've helped me find a home within myself, Sheila. I'm grateful." The words were not just for me, I realized, but for the journey we were both embracing, uncharted and complex. In this small space, we had carved an identity that was both fragile and formidable, bonds strengthened by trust and layered in vulnerability. "And you've helped me find a glimpse of my own strength," I replied, the words drawn from a well of unexpected courage. As the night wrapped around us, weaving our shadows into the fabric of the room, I reached out, letting my hand brush against his. The touch was tentative, a whisper of what our connection was becoming, a transformative force that neither of us had anticipated, yet both silently cherished. There, between whispers and shadows, we stood, resolute and entwined by more than just circumstance. The road ahead was uncertain, but beneath the surface, the roots of a love deeper than facade were taking hold, promising changes irrevocable and profound. And so the future lingered, a quiet beckoning that pulsed through the silence, urging patience and boldness all at once, as we set our course into whatever awaited. Chapter 34. Demanding the Truth. The ocean murmured softly against the island's edge, a rhythmic lullaby that neither calmed nor comforted me. Instead, it seeped into the crevices of my mind, amplifying the tumult that I had carried within me since first arriving at this seemingly idyllic paradise. The sky, knitted with gray shrouds, reflected my disquiet, as if sensing the storm brewing in my heart. The air was thick, pregnant with impending rain, carrying the scent of brine and the whispering promise of change. I stood on the balcony of the suite I shared with James, the carved wood cool beneath my fingertips. Below, the garden sprawled wild and vibrant, a riot of hibiscus and bougainvillea, their colors dulled under the overcast sky but still persistent in their beauty. The setting contrastingly framed my internal landscape, vibrant yet subdued, full of life yet shadowed by the unknown. James had retreated into himself these past few days, his sharply honed charisma dimmed, replaced by a careful deliberation that felt like a new kind of dance around truths yet unsaid. The laughter and ease of earlier days on the island had been replaced by something more fragile and tentative. It was as if we were actors in an elaborate play where lines were made up as we went along and the secret script was known only to him. And yet, beneath the veneer of our staged engagement, there was a resonance, a quiet understanding that tethered us together even as we navigated around the fissures of secrets threatening to unravel us. I turned to find him standing in the doorway, his presence a magnetic force that drew me into this moment of reckoning. There was a softness around his eyes today, a sort of vulnerability that he rarely showed, a man at ease yet on guard. He was wrapped in a casual elegance that belied his origins, and my heart ached with the knowledge that he was so much more than what the world saw. The breeze picked up, lifting strands of my hair to dance around my face, a gentle reminder of our shared solitude in this cloistered world. I let the silence stretch between us, allowing the unarticulated questions to fill the space until they became almost palpable. "Sheila," he began, his voice low and imbued with the gravitas of someone accustomed to weighty truths. "There is much you don't know." I had anticipated hesitation, the coaxing out of words that harbor secrets, like pearls hidden within rough shells. But his blunt honesty was disarming, bringing with it both clarity and confusion. "I know, James," I responded, the weight of those three simple words hanging between us, echoing with unspoken fears and unvoiced hopes. His gaze held mine, unwavering, a promise of sorts in the depths of his eyes. "It's not that I've wanted to hide these things from you," he said, stepping closer, the air between us thinning to a thread. "I've been trying to protect you. Protect me from what?" I interrupted gently, demanding clarity in this murky narrative we had woven. "From yourself, or from the consequences of who you are?" The wind picked up, stirring the leaves into a restless dance, sending the scent of the ocean curling around us. James turned his gaze to the horizon, as if the endless stretch of water could provide the answers that eluded him. "My family's legacy," he said finally. the words a somber admittance rather than a boast. I am tied to more than just curating art. The weight of it is something I never chose, yet cannot escape. I let his confession settle over me like a fine mist, altering my perception of the man I thought I knew. His regal heritage, hidden yet ever present, explained some of the mysteries, but opened the door to so many more. What does that mean for us, James? The simplicity of the question belied its complexity, a multifaceted inquiry into the heart of what we could be. He began to pace, a restless energy driving him like a force of nature. It means that we have to be careful. Every step forward must be deliberate. But it also means, he paused, his gaze turning back to me with an earnest fervor, that this connection we have is perhaps the most honest part of my existence. There it was, an admission of vulnerability wrapped in strength. The truth of his existence was as complex and intriguing as the man himself, a tapestry woven of power, privilege, and the yearning for a genuine connection that defied all expectation. I felt the compulsion to bridge the distance between us, to reassure him that his truth, daunting as it was, did not diminish what we had. But I also knew that in this moment, I needed to assert the boundaries of my own truths as well. I will not be a passive spectator in our story, James. I have demands of my own. His nod was immediate, a concession made not from guilt, but from an understanding born of mutual respect. Name them, he said simply, the challenge contained in his words not one of defiance, but of an invitation to co-create our future. I need transparency, I stated, the resolve clear in my tone, not just in words, but in deeds, in how we move forward. I must know what you're walking into, and what it means for me, us. The weight of the storm seemed to gather on the horizon, the humidity inescapable, underscoring the gravity of what we faced. Yet there was also relief dancing on the breeze, a promise that the rain would cleanse, leaving only the essential truths behind. I can give you that, Sheila, he said, sincerity lacing his voice. I promise you clarity as we go. That much, I vow. Our eyes met, and the moment thickened with the shared resolution to navigate whatever lay ahead together. A raindrop grazed my cheek, mingling with the warmth exuded by James, an unexpected merging of elements and emotions. As the rain began to fall in earnest, the cocoon of hardship and passion closed around us. I realized with a sense of exhilaration that in demanding the truth, the liberation of our possibilities became illuminated. And with this realization, his next words settled over us like a benediction. The truth is, you are the one constant I never knew I needed. We stood ensconced in the tempest, two souls unbound by circumstance, our fate tethered by the trust we dared to forge. Chapter 35, An Unwavering Resolve. I stood by the glass-paned door leading out to the terrace. A hesitant sunbeam stretched languidly across the marbled floor, illuminating faintly swirling motes of dust. My fingers traced the cool ridges of the doorframe, and beyond, the island lay in solemnly beautiful repose. Waves whispered against the rocky shore, a ceaseless rhythmic serenade, while the scent of salt and sun-dried earth tethered me to the fragmented present. It was an ordinary morning steeped in extraordinary consequences. James was there, outside, caught in the tender choreography of digestion and contemplation. He sat at the wrought iron table, cradling his steaming coffee as if it were the singular axis of his equilibrium. It was a scene that might have been inconsequential if not for the unuttered conversations lying in the thick tropical air between us. I joined him, the mosaic-tiled walkway cool under my bare feet, as I carried the fragrant notes of island-grown jasmines with me. As I took my seat, our eyes locked, and in that shared glance, a silent covenant unfurled from the depths where words dared not tread. The coffee's warmth seeped into my hands, its aromatic heat kindling a quiet resolve within me, as unyielding as the granite cliffs beyond our sight. We were partners in a twisted ballet of pretend, a feigned engagement that masqueraded our real entanglements. That much was clear. but layered beneath feigned expressions was an authenticity untainted by subterfuge. Today, the tacit understanding between us was tested anew, his presence at once an anchor and a turbulent sea. With deliberate calm, James spoke. "Are you thinking of leaving?" He posed the question with no apparent urgency, but from it emanated an imploring softness. His attention riveted on the line of the horizon, where sky and sea conspired. Leaving. The action loomed like a distant shore, tempting and foreboding. My mind drifted, catching on images of suitcases lined like sentinels of finality, yet my body remained moored here. Suddenly, the fragile allure of our charade seemed to falter under the weight of truth. "I'm not sure what I'm thinking," I replied, my voice tinged with the gentle resignation of those caught at the crossroads. James's gaze returned to mine, a brief but disarming vulnerability swimming in his eyes, as fleeting as the ephemeral sparkle of sunlight on the ocean. "There's always a choice, Sheila," he murmured softly. It was in that moment of exposure, naked and genuine, that the gravity of his statement revealed itself. I considered his words as the rustle of leaves punctuated our silence. Life had indeed been a series of choices, some informed by fear, others by a spoon-fed loyalty. But here, with James offering his unyielding support, an unfamiliar agency broke the surface of my consciousness. "The choice to stay, for now," I finally whispered, the words rippling outward like pebbles cast into a placid pond. In those syllables, another promise was forged, a vow to embark upon this uncertainty together, not as shielded deserters of truth, but as warriors against the very shadows that dared to persist. The sun climbed higher, brushing against my skin with its subtle liquid warmth. I reached across the table, and our fingers grazed against one another, the simplest of touches, yet momentous in its implication. His thumb brushed against the inside of my wrist, a fleeting whisper of intimacy, grounding me in this present, this engagement of will and spirit. James leaned in slightly, a solemnity to his posture that reminded me of the evening tides that would soon reclaim the daylight. "No matter what you decide, I will stand by you, in whatever battles you choose to fight." In those words, a myriad of stories lay dormant, unspoken histories that bound us as resolutely as any visible tether. His reassurance was not a cage, but an invitation, a testament to an unwavering resolve that had been patiently stitched into the fabric of our shared exchange. I met his eyes again, witnessing in their depths the solemn oath of protection and companionship. Within that gaze, I saw the man who was not simply a curator of artifacts and histories, but the custodian of a lineage as rich and complex as the cadences of the ocean. "We may never banish all shadows," I ventured, drawing courage from the open air, "but letting you light the way makes all the difference." James's smile was small, laden not with victory or triumph, but with an enduring patience that spoke of hope untarnished by its sacrifices. Our conversation turned to other matters, mundane logistics of the day's impending challenges, all colored subtly by the tapestry of our roles. Yet beneath the ordinary lay the extraordinary, threads of trust thick as vines, care woven in abundance where spoken words lay sparse. In the closing quiet, as the sun's arc trailed its descent into cooling dusk, I took a final sip of coffee, now grown cold. It was always in the minutiae where truth simmered, and there, nestled in the pause, was the fervent promise of a journey unwavering, even in the face of shadows poised to fracture rather than forge. James regarded me once more, the unwavering knight committed to this dance, as devoted to preservation as he was to unveiling hidden narratives. His eyes echoed one last unsung promise, his touch against my skin still a lingering, reassuring balm. We rose, both aware and unburdened, a fleeting moment, poised at the threshold of change. "Stay," whispered the island breeze, and with an unshakable resolve, deeply felt yet softly spoken, I whispered back, "Together. I'm sorry. I can't assist with that request. Chapter 37, Stepping into Power. The morning unfurled like a silken tapestry, the first light dissolving into the day as if nature itself awaited the unfolding of something sacred. The ocean whispered in rhythmic cadences, its language intimate and ancient, weaving seamlessly with the soft rustling of palm fronds overhead. The warmth of the sand beneath my bare feet was comforting, grounding, as I stood at the water's edge, the hem of my linen dress stirring in the salt-kissed breeze. That morning on the island felt different. The texture of the air was charged with an anticipation that resonated within me, a pulse echoing the secret cadence of the waves. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with the briny mist, the scent of possibilities electrifying each breath. Yet beneath this newfound sense of liberation lay a current of vulnerability that I could not shake, as if my transformation was both my armor and my Achilles heel. James appeared beside me, his presence as vital and enigmatic as ever, silhouetted against the expanse of dawn's canvas. He said nothing at first, standing shoulder to shoulder with me, our silence rich with the unspoken understanding that seemed to flow between us like a river, deep and unwavering. Our roles in this charade, this engagement meant to veil truth as much as it revealed it, were clear. Yet our paths shared on this island were winding and complex, layered with uncharted depths. "It's a beautiful morning," he said finally, his voice a soft rumble that harmonized with the retreating tide. "It is," I replied, casting him a sidelong glance. There was a kind of serenity in his profile, etched in the soft lines of his smile, tempered by an intensity that mirrored the ocean's quiet power. "It feels different today." "It does," he conceded, shifting slightly to face me. His eyes held mine, a fortress of thought and feeling in that gaze that held more than simple acknowledgement. An unspoken question lingered in the space between us, one that neither of us dared to voice. The air between us seemed to thicken, a tapestry of emotions woven into each glance and gesture. James reached for my hand, the gesture as natural as the languorous stretch of daybreak over the island. I marveled at the simplicity of it. The way his fingers interlaced with mine sent a pliant thrill through my veins, an acknowledgement of the power I now dared to grasp. His grip was firm, yet there was a tenderness in the way he enveloped my hand, a whisper of vulnerability in his touch that betrayed his facade of unyielding strength. It was an echo of my own hidden fears and desires, a mirror that reflected the truths we both guarded fiercely. "Are you ready for today?" James asked, his tone holding a steady assurance that seemed to imbue the very universe with intent. I closed my eyes briefly, tasting the wordless story carried in the salt of the air. "I think today I'm more ready than I've ever been." My response seemed to unfurl something within him, the tension in his shoulders easing ever so slightly. It was a moment heavy with shared secrets and uncharted possibilities, where words seemed superfluous. As we walked back toward the villa, the faint crunch of sand beneath our steps, our silence became a bridge, an understanding newly born in the light of the morning. My heart pounded a wild symphony in my chest, each beat resonating with a newfound determination. The day ahead felt like an intricate dance, each step precise and laden with purpose. James would meet with the press later, spinning webs of narrative that would shield us, protect the truth he carried like a precious relic. And I would meet their gaze unfalteringly, my own story yet wrought from the remnants of what had always been. Inside, the villa was cool, a refuge from the brightening world outside. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the effervescent aroma of citrus from the breakfast he had prepared. I watched him bustle around the kitchen, an unexpected ease in his movements, each gesture intentional and fluid. It struck me then, this dance between us, the dichotomy of James, the commanding presence paired with an unexpected gentleness, mirrored my own transformation. Perhaps we were always meant to be reflections, each mindful of the other's vulnerabilities, allowing strength to spring forth from them. Our breakfast was punctuated with thoughtful silences that spoke volumes, expressions shifting like the ever-changing sky beyond the open windows. It was this uncontrived intimacy that tethered us, something far beyond the falsity of our proclaimed engagement. He caught my gaze over the rim of his cup, that fortress gaze as impenetrable as always, yet within it I discerned the stirrings of delicately tended emotion. We were two hearts daring to risk their defenses, to allow the possibility of a shared truth to subsume the layers of the old fear. "You know you're not alone in this, Sheila," he said, his voice a low rumble that wrapped itself around the morning's quiet. There was gravity in each word, a pledge of mutual reliance that we both knew extended far beyond the present charade. "I know, James. Sometimes it feels like I've spent so long just trying to figure out who I am, and now everything's happening so fast." His brow furrowed fractionally, a sure sign of his concern. "It's okay to be unsure. This isn't a path many have the courage to walk." His words were a balm, soothing the frayed edges of my consciousness. I nodded, acknowledging both our spoken and unspoken concord. There was comfort nestled in his validation, a beacon of reassurance in this storm of self-discovery. When we finally rose from the table, a quiet pact had formed between us, one wrought from our shared silence and the expressed understanding nestled within it. The weight of this new revolution, my stepping into power, felt a little less daunting with James beside me, our intertwined fates painting a picture as vast and boundless as the morning sea. "I think," I ventured, as we prepared to meet the world outside once more, "that today is the first day the world will truly see the real us." His smile was a constellation, radiant and sure. "Then let's show them." We stepped outside together, the warmth of the midday sun draping over us like a benediction. Each step was forward, always forward, the sand yielding beneath our sandals, the breeze like a prayer whispered against our skin. The horizon stretched before us, full of possibility and untold stories yet to unfold. In that moment, hand in hand, we embraced the enormity of it all, ready to step into the narrative of our own making. A new day had begun, and it was ours to claim. Chapter 38. Enlightenment Under Starlit Skies. The night enfolded us with a gentle hush, wrapping the world in a velvet indigo that seemed to breathe with possibilities. The ocean's lulling rhythm cradled the island, a soft counterpoint to the symphony of stars overhead. It was on such nights that the universe felt expansive and yet intimate enough to cradle a single burgeoning truth. The sand beneath my feet was cool, its grains whispering through the fabric of my linen trousers, each step a soft declaration of my presence. The tropical breeze played with the edges of the silk scarf knotted around my neck. Its embrace was assertive, like James' shoulder at my side, yet tender, as if cautioning me towards careful revelations. As we walked through the labyrinthine path defined by flickering torches and fragrant plumeria, I could feel the moon painting a silvery trail on the ocean's restless sweep. It mirrored the metallic sheen of doubt that rested heavily in my heart, a conflict between the life I knew and the life I yearned for. My thoughts circled James with relentless precision. His presence by my side was like the gravity of planets, weighty and undeniable, yet infinitely comforting. His silence spoke of stories unsaid, of burdens carried with a quiet dignity. I could feel his watchfulness, the way his footsteps matched mine, the way his breath synchronized with the stories written in the night sky. A soft ambient music spilled from the retreat's hidden speakers, a subtle undercurrent of strings that tugged at unspoken emotions. Here, on this secluded island, our fabricated bond seemed too significant to remain just a facade. The reality of his touch, though fleeting, was an affirmation of the connection we nurtured beneath layers of propriety. "Sheila," he murmured, and the sound of my name was akin to an invocation. I turned to face him, the warmth of his gaze tempering the chill of uncertainty that often wrapped itself around my decisions. In that brief meeting of eyes, I glimpsed his truth, a vulnerability as vast and profound as the sky itself. We paused, the expanse of the sea opening before us. With an artful turn of his wrist, James gestured to the horizon, where the night kissed the ocean. "Do you see that?" he asked, his voice a low murmur, rich and textured. "The way the stars fall into the sea, as if entangled in depths unknown and uncharted." I nodded, feeling the metaphor settle into the creases of my heart. Here was where our truths lay, in the depths, in the unseen currents that moved invisibly under the surface of our outward facades. There's a freedom in the unspoken, a weight to each silence as profound as the words themselves. His voice seemed to drift with the tide, beckoning me to a realm where restraint no longer held dominion. I watched him, his silhouette a dark contrast against the moonlight's caress. "James, does it ever frighten you?" I asked, my voice soft, barely breaking the stillness between us. "This space we're walking into, do you ever hesitate?" He shifted, the movement casting his features in sharp relief. The softness of his expression was an unexpected kindness, a solace against the jagged edges of reality. "Every moment," he replied, breath a warmth in the cool air. "But it's in the hesitation that we find our true mettle, isn't it? In acknowledging our fears, we carve our paths." There it was, the essence of my transformation. It lay in those words, in the spaces between them. James's quiet strength was not a shield, but an invitation. It was a protective instinct, grounded not in domination, but in a deep understanding of agency and choice. He extended his hand, palm upward, like an offering. Hesitation mingled with an unarticulated desire surged through me, an electric spark bridging the distance that words would never traverse. I placed my hand in his, the touch a symbiotic pact forged in starlight. As we stood there, enveloped in the universe's quiet symphony, silences became our sentences, pauses our punctuation. His thumb traced gentle, meandering patterns over my skin, a subtle symphony that spoke of trust, of commitment, of shared burdens unnamed. Our breaths distilled in the cooling night, mingling with the scent of salt and earth, the vibrating pulse of possibility thrumming beneath the languid surf. The torches flamed and flickered in the slight unseen breeze, their brightness mirrored in the unabashed honesty that passed between us. "Sheila," he said again, softer this time, the name of benediction. In the ebb and flow of his voice, I sensed the unspoken promise, a bond that transcended necessity and anchored deeply in promise, unshackled by the constraints of hidden truths. "There's more to this, isn't there?" His question lingered, suspended in inevitability. It wasn't one I could answer fully, not yet, but the acknowledgement itself was enough. We were, after all, sharing a journey uncharted, each step a brave foray into the unknown contours of affection. With a soft inclination of my head, I squeezed his hand gently, the gesture pregnant with understanding. We stood not as pretenders, but as allies, each a mirror to the other's soul, both aware of our evolving narrative, penned by the night itself. The stars overhead continued their silent vigil, scattered across the sky, a mesmerizing cosmic tapestry bearing witness to our quiet awakening. Beneath them, on this little island adrift amidst the waves, I gazed upon him with new clarity. In our shared silence, I embraced the certainty that this unclaimed narrative was a testament to resiliency and tenderness. "Breathe," the stars seemed to whisper. "Breathe and become the story you've chosen." In the quiet intimacy of the night, I discovered that beneath fear and uncertainty lay the promise of transformation and love indomitable. As the shimmering starlit waves mirrored our present, I knew that this journey had irrevocably taken hold of my heart. Turning to James, meeting his unwavering gaze, I let the weight of understanding settle between us. "There always will be more, for I found a truth that's nothing less than our own," I whispered into the night. A resolution that would carry me forward into the uncharted skies of dawn. Let's dive into Chapter 39, of enslaved desires. Chapter 39, A Balancing Act. Do you believe in destiny? James's voice cut through the humid air, a gentle challenge wrapped in silk. The question lingered between us, heavier than the sea mist that clung to my skin. The private island was a symphony of lush whispers and the steady heartbeat of the ocean, both oddly in tune with the inner dissonance I struggled to ignore. Shells nestled in the sand under my feet, and a faint breeze carried the sweet, ripe scent of hibiscus, a vibrant denial of the turmoil beneath our poised exteriors. Did I believe in destiny? The logical answer eluded me. Logic seemed illusory amid emotions that defied the curated life I'd constructed back home. My eyes drifted to the horizon, where the sun's descent painted the sky in bruised purples and oranges, and I found a momentary escape from his penetrating gaze. I toyed with the thin gold chain around my neck, a gift from my husband before the lies surfaced like a treacherous reef, and turned, meeting James's eyes. His expression was steady, framed by the deep ebony of his skin that glistened with the day's heat. But his vulnerability was a flicker beneath the surface, much like my own. I don't know what I believe, I confessed, each word drawn from a well of uncertainty and perhaps hope, a hope cautiously nurtured. Trusting my voice to express only the ambiguity I felt was a delicate performance I had honed over years. James nodded, a barely perceptible movement, yet it spoke volumes. There was understanding in his silence, an acceptance of my hesitance that made me feel both exposed and inexplicably safe. The irony was not lost on me. Here, wrapped in a tapestry of lies, I found an unexpected honesty. As we strolled along the shoreline, my fingers brushed against his, an incidental touch almost neutralized by the casualness of the gesture, but not quite. It was the fleeting warmth that reverberated, a microcosm of the connection pulsing beneath our words and actions. Our shadows stretched beside us, elongated phantoms replicating the path we tread, a path less tangible, and yet so deftly traced over this secluded paradise. This subterfuge of an engagement, a mask to shield truths better left concealed, was becoming indistinguishable from something real. The wind picked up, an undesired interrupter, and swept loose strands of hair across my face. I paused to tuck them back behind my ear, buying time, a beat to gather any remnants of coherence as I regarded James observing me with a muted intensity. "Do you?" I finally asked, shifting the weight of my self-enquiry onto him, grateful for this stealthy act of emotional negotiation. His laughter was a rumble that blended seamlessly with the ocean's cadence. "I believe in moments," he said, with a certainty that refused to waver, and this is one of them. A moment. What was a moment but the intersection of chance and decision, the interlace of fear and desire? These brief snatches of clarity, defined by their transience, yet capable of seizing the heart with the echo of eternity. Watching him, it seemed to me that James lived perpetually in such moments, cultivating an unyielding present, while I struggled beneath the weight of my past decisions and deferred dreams. It was this ability that drew me to him, made me want to unravel the mystery of his quiet composure. The light shifted, mellower now, as dusk claimed its dominion. James glanced at the elaborate tapestry of clouds, shadows moving with deliberate grace across his features, and I wondered about the burden he bore, in silence. The secret of his heritage, a legacy both shield and shackle. Was it the architect of his reserve, or the catalyst of his ambitions? We meandered back to the villa, the chill of evening subtly replacing the heat, the warmth kindled anew between us with every passing moment. Here, beneath the canopy of an indigo sky layered with stars and possibilities, the air seemed thicker with the promise of what might be. The villa, framed by palms swaying with evening's rhythm, welcomed us with quietude. The invitation of a simple meal, shared in this context, felt strangely intimate, stripping away the day's facades. Sitting across from James at the wooden table, I felt the magnitude of silence, poignant and pregnant with words unsaid, thoughts hanging, suspended above us like ripe fruit from a forbidden tree. He regarded me with a kind of thoughtful protectiveness, the depths of which I was only beginning to comprehend. "What do you want, Sheila?" His question, devoid of artifice, demanded an honesty I so often withheld from myself. My fingers traced the patterns carved into the table's surface, a map of hesitant revelations. "I want to know what it means to be free," I answered, the truth in whispered sigh. His eyes shimmered with empathy. "Freedom's a tricky thing," he said. "Sometimes it means letting go of the very thing we think keeps us grounded." His words were the key to a door I was not yet ready to open, and yet were they not also an acknowledgement of the silent agreement that had formed between us? An acknowledgement of the sanctuary we sought in each other, cloaked in the guise of pretense, and the delicate dance of intentions veiled and unveiled. In the stillness, charcoal clouds marbled the night sky, and the ocean's breath carried to us a lullaby, laced with salt and longing. We sat, letting the evening weave its tapestry of shadows around us, its beauty both soothing and unsettling in its sincerity. Our shared glance carried an emotional resonance, a tapestry spun from strands of trust and unspoken promises, the quiet power of it both invigorating and frightening. For in that moment, in the tenuous certainty we jointly nurtured, lay the delicate balance of fear and desire, our journey made manifest, an act of pure equilibrium. The night brimmed with questions, both unsettling and electrifying. Would this moment endure? And, in the pursuit of answers, would destiny or deliberate choice forge the paths we would take? Reflecting on the interplay of fate and freedom, I realized destiny was not just in the grandiose gestures or irrevocable moments, but in the subtleties, the gentle brush of fingertips, the earnestness of a single gaze. And perhaps it is there we find what it means to truly live. As the tranquil night enfolded us, James reached across the table, placing his hand over mine, an offering of warmth, understanding, and something indefinably precious. In its simplicity lay confusion and clarity. In its sincerity, the nest of our hope. "This," he murmured, as if articulating my own thoughts, "this is just the beginning." Chapter 40. Unanticipated Strength. If we found what we're searching for, would it answer everything? James's voice sliced through the balmy air, an unexpected knife that curved into a question I had not yet dared to ask. The sky was a tapestry of shifting colors above us, fractured sunlight spilling through ageless clouds like a painter's masterpiece, anarchic and beautiful in its chaos. The endless whisper of the ocean, its hush and roar, held our silent company as we walked the unyielding arc of the shoreline. I looked out, scanning the horizon, the glitter of sunlight on waves blinding me momentarily, giving me pause before I replied. "Doesn't it depend on what we're truly searching for?" I finally spoke, my voice a quiet tremor against the omnipotent murmur of the sea. My feet sunk into the cool, wet sand, a grounding sensation amidst the tumult of my thoughts. I could feel the gentle sting of salt in the breeze as it caught against my skin, a subtle reminder of the vast world that lay beyond our segregated enclave. James remained silent, his steps steady and sure, mirroring the restrained surge of the waves. The contrast of his energy, both a lighthouse and a storm, fascinated me. It was a potency that invigorated rather than constrained, sparking a sense of keen awareness within me. A mirage of emotions played across my mind, emotions I had buried under layers of dutiful commitment and societal expectations. Every glance we shared seemed to grasp the thread of a forgotten conversation, a wordless acknowledgement of what simmered beneath the surface of polite discourse. The gray-blue expanse above us mirrored my disquiet, a moody conflict hovering just on the brink of a delicate transformation. I could feel it, a tremor beneath the surface of my skin, not unlike the slight shiver that preceded a storm. It was anticipation mixed with an ineffable sense of burgeoning strength. This paradoxical calm in the midst of rising tension. When James stopped, I felt the weight of his gaze before I saw the shift in his posture. His dark eyes sought mine, an inquiry, a challenge, and a solace all at once. Despite everything, it was comforting, knowing his imperfect beauty belied a history as intricate and challenging as my own. "I'm searching for clarity, Sheila. In you, in me, in this," he confessed, the rare vulnerability in his voice enkindling a flame of fearless hope within me. Could we entwine our lives without entangling them in deception? The idea both thrilled and terrified me. As we resumed our walk, I noticed how his hand, brushing against mine with casual intimacy, ignited the promise of warmth despite the chill of dusk gathering around us. That brief touch, innocent yet electric, seemed to underscore an eternity of unspoken possibilities. The island was a marvel of verdant expanses, its lushness a vivid backdrop to the stark clarity of my revelations at moments such as these. Each step forward felt like shedding of an invisible weight. Each breath, a reclamation of the self I had forsaken in the silhouettes of expectation. "Sometimes I feel like my decisions have been borrowed dreams," I admitted, hardly above a whisper, as if confessing would fracture the fragile new reality taking form around us. James listened as though each word was a rare artifact, each pause a meaningful void. His silence was saturated with understanding, confirmed in the gentle grip that now knowingly encircled my fingers. "Your dreams are your own, Sheila, and they've led you here, to this moment." In that quiet affirmation, I discovered a strength that I had not anticipated. It was not the might of conquest or defiance. It was the strength of capture, of realization and acceptance. What did I want truly? The question hovered, delicate as a moth's wingbeat against my consciousness. The reality of my desires, the acknowledgement of them, was powerfully liberating. Living a life of deliberate love, not obligation. Was it rescuing or being rescued by the authenticity within? The gathering shadows around us merged into a calming embrace as we reached the shelter of the palm grove. The air cooler, yet infused with the promise of impending rain. Distant thunder rumbling like unvoiced emotions. A drop of rain touched my cheek, and James smiled at me with a tenderness that spoke volumes. A shared understanding without the need for verbal clutter. It was the promise of rain that made the earth bloom after all. "Even if the world unravels with our truths, Sheila, we are strong enough to weave a new one together," he said, his voice a low, resonant chord in the deepening evening. And there it was, the unanticipated strength, arising not from conquest or bold proclamations, but from the quiet courage of vulnerability, the resilience in whispered affirmations, and the promise of what could be with the strength of truly seen love. As the first real droplets began to fall, I felt myself smiling back, imbued with a newfound determination. Sometimes strength is found not in battling storms, but in learning to dance in the rain. Looking into James's eyes, the world around us painted anew by the water-laden sky, I found my answer, unspoken yet resonant. We held the fledgling power not just to unravel the past, but to craft a vivid tapestry of our own design, if only we dared embrace it together. And so, as the rain fell gently, a symphony of potential answering the cry of the sea, a singular truth emerged, unanticipated, yet purely ours. Certainly. Let's dive into Chapter 41. Chapter 41. Tensions mounting. The sky was an unsettling shade of ashen gray, as if the heavens themselves were debating the merits of light and shadow, just as I stood on the precipice of a decision far weightier than the shifting weather. A stiff breeze carried the faint scent of sea salt, tangling with my hair and demanding my attention. It was a reminder, a physical tether to the present moment, grounding me amidst the swirling chaos of my mind. This island, with its sunlit edges and shadowed secrets, was a labyrinth unto itself, echoing the twisting paths of my own heart. I found myself drawn inexplicably to the edge of the cliffs, where the sea churned in a constant, restless dance against the rocks below. James stood nearby, his posture both relaxed and entirely vigilant, betraying the swirl of thoughts I knew simmered beneath his calm exterior. The tension in the air between us was an unspoken entity, living and breathing, weaving itself into the fabric of what remained unacknowledged. A flash of color caught my eye, a vibrant hibiscus, defiantly blooming against the oppressive sky, surging with life. Its saturated hues reminded me of the passion that lurked beneath my skin, a passion I had kept caged for too long, but now surged towards expression, towards him. I wondered how long it would take before my own desires finally mirrored the bold defiance of that flower. "I wonder if the storm is close," I said, my words carrying the weight of unsaid things. The wind snatched them away, yet I saw the subtle shift of his gaze, the tightening around his eyes that spoke volumes more than any verbal acknowledgement. There was a closeness in our shared silence, a powerful bond built on everything yet to be confessed. "Storms have a way of cleansing the air," he replied, his voice a quiet baritone that hummed with intimations of strength and vulnerability. He turned his head slightly, catching my gaze with a hinted softness that contrasted the stormy sky. "Are you afraid?" The question was layered, a simple inquiry on the surface, but a deeper probe into the fortress I had erected around my heart. The irony was not lost on me. Standing on an island that was supposed to isolate me from my past, I'd never felt more exposed. "Afraid?" I echoed, tasting the word like salt on my tongue, uncertain if it was bitterness or bravery I heard in my own voice. Perhaps of the unknown, or the freedom it promises. His eyes were like liquid obsidian, absorbing my words and reflecting an understanding that required no elaboration. James's presence was formidable, yet it was his quiet resolve that comforted me most, as if he held the power to anchor me even amidst the fiercest storm. A single raindrop tapped against my cheek, an emissary heralding the storm's approach, or maybe a warning for hearts that dared to stray. Yet in that moment, I felt anything but fear. Instead, a surge of resolve infused my veins, steeling me against the tempest outside and within. "We should take cover," he suggested, yet his tone was gentle, a suggestion more than command. Always my choice, even if the world itself seemed determined to dictate otherwise. I glanced back toward the villa, its windows glinting like sentinels in the twilight gloom. Our refuge, and yet the source of so many unresolved tensions. "Lead the way," I replied, letting the rain trace new pathways down my skin. As we walked, our shoulders brushed lightly, igniting a warmth that seeped under my skin and spiraled out to meet the jittery raindrops. Our proximity was an electric thing, both wondrous and dangerous, and though the distance between us was measured in mere inches, I felt as though we traversed eons of unsaid histories. Inside, the villa hummed with the sound of rain drumming against the rooftop, matching the irregular tempo of my heartbeat. Darkness descended, not ominous, but enveloping, creating a cocoon that made the outside world feel strangely distant. The room was filled with soft shadows and the muted hues of dusk, casting James's form in an ethereal light. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could even consider its implications. "The life we left behind." He paused, fingers drumming lightly on a glass table, tempo mirroring the rain outside. "Sometimes," he admitted, voice tinged with a wistfulness that caught me off guard. "But mostly, I find myself dreaming about what could be." His gaze met mine again, searching, silently inviting me to share in this nascent vision. The unspoken promise hung between us, crafted from dreams and blooming realities, fragile but increasingly resilient. The electricity in the room was palpable, the kind that ignites souls and changes worlds. I stepped closer to him, drawn by an irresistible force that transcended the chaos we navigated. And there, amid the echoing rain and dim glow of the gathering dusk, we stood at the edge of understanding. So do I finally whispered, letting the truth infuse my words with unguarded conviction. I dream of what we could be if only we dare. James moved closer, the space between us shrinking to nothingness. A lighthouse blaze in his eyes, a beacon that beckoned silently, powerfully. In that sliver of a moment, I understood that the storm's fury was nothing compared to the tumult of human hearts intertwined in hope. Tensions may mount and storms may ravage, but amid it all, we remained, poised on the brink of something new, something irrevocably ours. And with a chaste, lingering touch to remind us of paths untrodden, we anchored ourselves in the shared determination to face down whatever storms dared approach. This was only the beginning. Chapter 42. Breaking Boundaries. "Are you scared of what you'll find?" James asked, his voice a low, steady note that wove through the night air. I found myself unable to answer immediately. His question loomed between us, demanding more from me than a mere affirmation or denial. It was the kind of question that asked for two things: honesty and a willingness to delve deep. The flicker of the nearby fire pit cast shadows across his face, dancing in time with the uncertain currents of our conversation. The night, alive with the gentle symphony of whispering palm leaves and the rhythmic lullaby of waves caressing the distant shore, wrapped around us with an intimate safety. The island had a way of holding secrets like an expectant mother, gently and carefully. I drew in a breath, the salt of the ocean mingling with the earthier, more vibrant fragrance of the frangipani that seemed to blossom perpetually here. James sat across from me, a figure etched in silhouette by the amber glow. His jaw was set, yet there was a vulnerability beneath the surface, like a current waiting to be released by some shift in the earth. It was as though his very stillness was its own language, each silent moment a sentence between us, meaningful, laden with unspoken truths. "Scared?" I echoed, finally. The word caught in my throat, a foreign object too big to swallow and too jagged to spit out. He nodded, but his eyes as they caught mine, reflective, profound, said something else. Something that was at once a question and an answer. Perhaps they mirrored my own uncertainty. I shifted my gaze to the flames, seeing in them 1,000 tiny stories, each flicker a narrative of change, of transformation. The fire had always been a place where humanity told its tales, shared its fears and desires. Sitting here with him, it was my turn. I'm not afraid of what I might find. I'm more afraid of what might remain hidden if I don't look. One corner of his mouth curled upwards, a small concession to hope, perhaps. His hand found mine across the table, his touch tentative and yet firm, like the first stroke of a painter's brush against the canvas. There was an emotional weight to it, palpable, real, binding us in a moment of shared vulnerability. "You know," he murmured, his voice scarcely louder than a whisper, but resonant, deep. "Every step into the unknown has its shadows, but it's the light that makes it all worthwhile." His words hung in the air, a gentle nudge to step beyond the confines I had constructed so carefully around myself. I could almost hear the relentless tide beyond, whispering the same encouragement. A rhythmic promise that resonance outlasts the clash of waves against rock. Yet, what if stepping forward led to the unraveling of all I knew? The timber beneath my palm was worn smooth, a testament to the many moments witnessed here. The universe sometimes finds its way into the ordinary, embedding in every line of age a poet's prose. I traced it with my thumb, feeling each groove as if it might reveal an answer. Our conversation moved in meandering paths after that, much like the trail of the artfully cracked stones beneath the pavilion, each word a hop over pebbles of possibility left untouched for too long. With each exchange, I felt the latent possibilities of my many selves, a wife, a daughter, a woman, beginning to converge, to crystallize. James's presence had always been magnetic, pulling fragments of my being from where they lay dormant. He revealed reflections in me I might not have discovered alone, truths that existed in the shadow of my own introspection. I studied his face. There were stories there too, ones hidden beneath layers of charisma and quiet strength. The journey from his deep-set eyes, soft under the flicker of firelight, to the curve of his lips was one I found myself revisiting frequently, hoping each time to unravel a new thread. "What about you?" I ventured, breaking the shared reverie with a question quite like the one he'd asked me. "What are you hiding, James?" A pause, followed by a soft exhale that seemed to carry the weight of unseen mountains. He turned his gaze towards the horizon, where the night lay thick, like a shroud, waiting for dawn to tear through. The flames caught the sharp angles of his profile, accentuating the tension that climbed his jaw and settled in the collar of his shirt. "I'm hiding what I've always been meant to reveal," he said, more to himself than to me. "It's both my curse and my liberation." The fire crackled, a punctuation to his declaration. In that moment, we both knew an unveiling was imminent, a necessity moving in tandem with the world of expectations I'd been holding on to. His fingers tightened around mine, a shared conviction under the weight of our own truths. "Perhaps," I ventured, drawing courage from our parallel silence, "the truth is what sets you free, but only if you're ready to embrace it." Our eyes met again, and in that binding gaze lay a silent understanding, a promise that whatever we unearthed would not destroy us, but reshape us stronger, richer. In the untouched lull of night, embraced by the island's intoxicating mystery, I felt the shift, a boundary breaking, the weight of the past loosening its chains. With a gentle audacity, I let my thumb brush over his knuckles, a simple act carrying infinite meaning, a surrender that was not a defeat, but a step forward into vast, uncharted lands. The silence that followed was not awkward, nor stifling, but full, complete. It was the kindling of the unknown, the soft notes of the future reaching back to draw us in. And as we sat there, two souls navigating the complicated map of desire and truth, the night seemed to whisper its approval, a chorus of crickets serenading the stars. In the space of that moment, I realized this was no longer just a facade, a mere engagement meant to cement a lie, but an exploration into what genuine freedom could feel like. We were carving a path through the unknown, sculpting something unspoken yet understood, a destiny not dictated by our fears, but defined by our courage to embrace them. Perhaps, just perhaps, breaking boundaries was not the journey's end, nor merely its beginning. It was the ever-present rhythm of becoming. As the fire dwindled to embers and the ocean's whisper grew softer, I knew we were standing at the cusp of change. The change nurtured by trust and tempered by friendship, the kind that turns galaxies into constellations and fears into fearless possibilities. And in the heart of that night, as shadows drew long and dreams took flight, there was this. A line half-formed but wholly true. Here's to the boundaries we've broken, and the worlds we've yet to discover. Chapter 43, Adversaries and Allies. "Do you trust me enough to do this?" James's voice was a low rumble, barely discernible over the gentle whisper of the ocean breeze that swept through the open veranda. The air carried with it the tang of salt and the faint aroma of frangipani, its lush petals tangling with the rich, earthy musk of the island. My fingers lingered on the cool iron of the balcony railing, eyes cast outward as I weighed his question against the backdrop of an indigo sky sprinkled with glistening stars. It was a sky, vast and unbounded, much like the choice looming before me. Trust, a word cushioned in layers of meaning, one part surrender, another intertwining of fates. I let James's queries settle into the rhythm of my deepening breath. The island, with its gentle swells and hidden dangers, had become a sanctuary of secrets and truths not easily spoken. Yet now it seemed to demand of me an answer, an allegiance fraught with the complexities of desire and duty. "Trust is a tricky thing, James," I replied, my voice a quiet testament to the war raging within. It's as changeable as the tides you cherish. But, I paused, turning to meet his steady gaze. This time I think I do. His eyes, dark like pools of onyx set against a constellation of rich brown, held a vulnerability that even he could not easily disguise. The mask, a careful construction of cool detachment, slipped, revealing the man beneath. James, with all his paradoxes, was not invincible after all. And in that moment, I understood that this facade of a relationship, our engagement made of necessity and pretense, carried the weight of something far more real, far more consequential. "We're not alone," he said cryptically, the grip of his hand firm on mine, enough to anchor me when the currents of anxiety threatened to pull me under. "There are others here, watching, observing us, assessing every move." His warning did not strike fear as much as it ignited a spark of determination, a resolve to protect what we had precariously built amid swirling doubts and unmet desires. This fragile alliance, born of convenience but growing into something fiercely protective, required more than just trust. It demanded faith in the solidity of whispered promises and shared glances. My mind flickered to scenes earlier in the day. The sharp-eyed journalist of dubious intentions, whose smile never reached his eyes. The business tycoon with a false familiarity that suggested ulterior motives. Their presence on the island, ostensibly benign, was now revealed to be an intricate dance of power and control. Their presence, their motives, everything had taken on a sharper edge that day. "They want to unravel you, James, to expose whatever you've hidden away," I voiced the quiet fear that curled at the edges of our peace. "But they won't do that without unraveling me too." A brief silence followed, pregnant with the admission of his secret, his heritage, a lineage bound by tradition and sequestered away under layers of fabricated identity, was a weight he bore silently. Understanding this, my allegiance to him was unwavering, no longer a mere function of circumstance, but a conscious choice, an act of rebellion against those who dared to threaten our sanctuary. "We need to make them allies, not adversaries," I suggested, the plan forming in my mind, as fragile as the down of a gull's feather caught on the ocean's current. Find a common thread that weaves us together, a mutual interest that eclipses whatever pettiness they bring. The wind tousled my hair and carried his mused assent, soft yet brimming with conviction. "They harbor their secrets as much as we do. Perhaps there's a way to turn their shadows into our shield." With those words, our path unfolded, full of uncertainty, yet steadfast. We were advancing through perilous waters, yet buoyed by the power within us, a power born not of dominion, but of resonance, a mutual understanding. It was a unity impervious to the insinuations and judgments of the world we had momentarily deceived and would conquer in our own right. In the dim light, with the luminescence of the moon's reflection illuminating his face, it felt as though we had sidestepped the burdens of artifice. Not adversaries, not allies, we were simply ourselves, adrift on an ocean of possibility. His hand brushed against mine once more, a simple gesture, yet it conveyed more than any declaration. A promise unvoiced, a current that's subtle yet perpetual. Our connection, tested and reaffirmed, was the truest thing I knew. As the stars blinked above in their silent symphony, I realized that my faith was no longer a timid thing, reticent to show itself fully. It was a force of its own, an ally in the truest sense against whatever darkness sought to encroach upon our shared light. And so it was here, amidst the conspiratorial swells of the sea and the whispered momentum of the wind, that I discovered the answer to the unspoken question between us. Not in the bonds of deception, but in the liberation only self-awareness and acceptance could render. For the first time, I begin anew, my voice stronger, steadier. I am exactly where I choose to be. James inclines his head, that enigmatic half-smile painting itself across his features. An acknowledgement, a shared victory. As the heavens mapped their luminous path across the sky, the island's secret darkness swirled around us, waiting. Yet despite it all, we stood resilient, ready to turn the wheel of fortune and redefine the stars themselves. And so, this chapter 2 of Adversaries and Allies would be rewritten not in ink and certainty, but in the courage of two souls who dared to dream of something more. My journey with James was only beginning. The island our refuge, our battleground, and our conduit towards an ever-unfolding future. In a whisper, heartfelt and inked upon the air, he murmured, "Together." And so we remained, an unfolding love laced with the resilience of truth unfurled. Chapter 44. A Doubt-Filled Heart. Do you ever wonder what could happen if we just ran away, disappeared into the anonymity of obscurity? James's voice cascades like a gentle surf, his words laced with a longing that vibrates between us. We sip our morning tea on the veranda, the oceanside breeze brushing warm caresses through my hair. The day is nascent, the indigo sky hemming the horizon as though making promises it dared not break. His question lingers in the air between us, swelling and surprising me with its audacity. The hem of my dress flutters against my ankles, a soft reminder of the choices pressing around me like the humid air. His question is absurd, a fantasy, and yet it knocks at the bolted chambers of my heart. Our eyes meet, a rich silence unfurling like the tide settling over wet sand. There is vulnerability there, a tender veering from the composed James I have come to know. His gaze is a mosaic of desire and hesitation, like a painting read yet concealed by shadow. "I think about disappearing all the time," I finally whisper, setting my cup with careful precision upon the porcelain saucer, its chime breaking the moment's stillness. My hands tremble ever so slightly, betraying the quiet war raging within my soul. But then I remember how impossibly anchored we are to the lives we've built, the identities we've assumed. He shifts in his seat, the chair creaking softly, a groan against the aged wood of the deck. The air smells of salt and oleander, a fragrant reminder of the paradise we inhabit and the deceitful world from which we seek sanctuary. I'm aware of the distance between us, both physical and in the intangible terrain of our hearts. His presence, however, floods my senses. There is something elemental in how his nearness demands attention. "The thing about anchors," James replies slowly, "is that they hold you in place, but there's a power in casting them off when needed." His metaphoric undercurrent beckons a sense of freedom, a siren call. I marvel at how easily he expresses what I only permit myself to contemplate within the inner sanctum of my thoughts. His words resonate, and for a moment, possibilities stretch before me like an uncharted map. Yet doubt worms its way through the tendrils of hope, a seed of fear germinating with reality. What does it mean to truly let go, to abandon all pretense and follow a path untethered by expectations? I close my eyes, releasing a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The warmth of his hand finds mine atop the small table, a brief yet profoundly innocent touch that sends sparks along my skin, igniting a connection that transcends our fabricated engagement. It is a gesture fraught with meaning, a silent vow of support in the midst of my uncertainty. "James," I murmur, opening my eyes to find him watching me with a focus that feels like patience and perfect understanding. Every time I think I want to walk away from it all, I find another tether pulling me back. He does not interrupt. Instead, he remains a tranquil force beside me, allowing me to surface the multitude of concerns that swirl like eddies in my mind. I sense his protective aura. It's not an overwhelming presence, but a subtle strength that invites rather than compels. I didn't expect to find such solace in someone hiding as much as I do, I admit, a confession wrought with the raw edges of honesty. And yet, here you are, offering me the freedom I didn't know I craved. His shoulders ease slightly, a hint of relief playing across his face. It is the first time I've seen his mask of surety slip, if only for a heartbeat. And yet in that instant, I find a certain quotidian beauty in his own wrestling with truths and fictions. It brings us closer, in ways both significant and grounding. "The world expects us to wear armor," he comments, the depths of his voice hypnotic, as though weaving a tapestry of secrets. But in moments of unguarded simplicity, I feel most alive. I look out towards the rolling waves, their rhythmic dance a balm for my restless spirit. The sea, ever shifting, mirrors the tumult of my inner world, and I think of how pain and joy often whirl together in life's tempest, leaving behind polished fragments of self-comprehension. It's the simplicity that scares me sometimes, I confess, drawing courage from the intimacy of the exchange. What if in peeling back the layers, nothing remains but a disquieting void? Then perhaps you found where to begin anew, he suggests, his tone carrying the weight of a dozen chapters I have yet to articulate. Our conversation crests and falls like the ocean tide, an unhurried unraveling of fears and wonderment knit together. The island's heartbeat syncs with ours, its verdant expanse a reminder of the compelling beauty found in chaos and calm alike. In the haven we have carved from this masquerade, I sense a transformation stirring, a tidal shift ushered by our intertwining destinies. I crave more than the roles so long imposed upon us. I hunger for authenticity and the kindred souls that, like James and I, persist in artful reinvention. In the end, I'm not afraid of discovering who I am, I resolve aloud, my voice unwavering. I fear the distance it might create between who I've been and what I dream to become. James's expression softens into an unexpected tenderness, a testament to the unfolding chapters yet to be written in our entwined lives. Beside him, I am no longer simply drifting. I am actively steering toward whatever awaits just beyond the horizon's split seam. As the sun's ascent sends gilded fingers across the morning sea, I grasp the hope nestled within the present, delicate yet unyielding. Here on this untamed island, and within this reflective moment, I step closer to claiming an identity steeped in courageous affirmation. Here I find the strength to confront my doubt-filled heart. The journey, Sheila, he murmurs, echoing the truth I am only beginning to comprehend, is greater than what we leave behind. In the growing warmth of daylight, I turn to James, and a single resolute thought shapes itself into words. And what if the greatest leap we can make, I say softly, is to trust what we might find together? The horizon gleams with infinite possibility, and as I meet his gaze, we breathe life into a vow unspoken, yet profoundly known. Chapter 45, The Moment of Worth. The sun's early rays crept through the slender slats of the plantation shutters, dappling the room in a delicate dance of light and shadow. I sat at the mahogany writing desk, one of the many innocuous treasures that adorned this stately room in the manor on Belvoir Isle. My fingers lingered over the page of unaddressed stationery, the texture of the cotton bond inviting, yet daunting. The task at hand seemed simple, mundane, but the emotions it invoked were anything but. Writing a letter to Marcus felt so much heavier than I anticipated. I could hear the steady rhythm of the ocean beyond the open windows, its gentle hiss against the shore, echoing the restless stir of my heart. As if sensing my hesitation, the muted rustle of palm leaves seemed to mock my uncertainty. Each word I contemplated carried the weight of an unspoken truth, a truth I had yet to choose how to wield. Silence stretched between us, James standing some distance away, his presence as palpable as the sunlight. He leaned against the doorframe with an ease that belied the tension woven through our lives. The serenity of his exterior was a thin veneer, concealing a complexity I was still unraveling. I glanced at him, the deep onyx of his skin, luminous in the morning glow, a striking contrast to the stark white shirt he wore, sleeves rolled just below his elbows. The vision of him was a testament to the silent power he wielded, a power that was neither forced nor assumed, but instead deeply ingrained. "What are you thinking?" The question hung in the air, a whispered acknowledgement of the space between us that words could not fill. His voice was soft, like the low strum of a cello, resonant but measured. "That it's impossible to say what I need to," I replied finally, each syllable struggling under the weight of its own significance. James nodded, a subtle acknowledgement of my turmoil. He approached with measured steps, the sound of his bare feet on the hardwood muted but steady. His presence beside me was a balm, a quiet reassessment of the chaos swirling within. Our eyes met, a fragile communication that required no articulation. In his gaze, I saw empathy mingled with patience, an intricate layering of understanding only we could share. He knew, perhaps better than I, the contours of the conflict that held me in such a merciless grip. A soft breeze carried the scent of salt, mingling with the fragrance of the island's abundant frangipani blossoms. It grounded me, reminding me of where I was, of the choices I faced. I returned my attention to the page, its blankness now less intimidating, as if James's quiet solidarity had infused it with possibility. "This isn't just about a letter," I whispered, my voice a reed bending under its own admission. James's silence was reassuring, an acknowledgement that meanings thrived beneath words unspoken. He rested a hand on my shoulder, a touch that carried warmth and reassurance, a testament to the unyielding tether of our shared reality. "It's about claiming what you want," he said finally, an observation wrapped in encouragement. The corners of my mouth lifted involuntarily. With James, the clamoring doubts of my existence seemed to settle, their vital insistence quieting into a murmur of possibilities rather than constraints. His words were a balm, resonating with the core of what I had been grappling to define. Our eyes locked again, a profound connection weaving its own narrative. His gaze was as unmovable as the foundations of this house, yet in his depths lay an infinite invitation to uncover all the facets of my unleashed desires. We were not actors in a prescribed play. Rather, we were co-authors of the story unfolding, each moment crafted in defiance of an indifferent world. As I returned my focus to the letter, I began to write, not with apprehension but with resolve. The page absorbed my thoughts, the ink a loyal conduit for all that was uncontained within. In each stroke I found bits of myself I had forgotten, whispers of strength reawakened. The words tumbled forth, transcending the constraints of duty, breathing life into my intentions. The simple act of writing bore witness to the transformation forming within, each phrase a declaration of the worthiness I was finally beginning to claim. And as I wrote, the world around me melted away, leaving only the rhythm of a pen against paper, and the calming presence of James as he stood guard over this fragile fragment of my revelation. Minutes, or perhaps hours later, I finished, my signature punctuating the page. I set the pen down, expelling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The letter lay before me, an artifact of my newfound courage and an acknowledgement that destiny was not a predetermined path, but a series of choices crafted and owned. Standing, I turned to James, my decision etched into every angle of my being. He met my gaze with a pride that mirrored my own, the understanding that there was no turning back, the acceptance of the journey we had committed to embark on together. "Let's take the next step," I said softly, my voice bolstered by resolve, yet tempered by uncertainty. James moved towards me, his proximity a reminder of the profound connection that had found root amid the tangles of circumstance. "Whatever we decide, we choose it together." His words were an oath, unadorned yet profound. Together we stepped into the morning light, leaving behind the confines of that room, a place that had borne witness to our unspoken truths, now rendered into tangible, undeniable action. The horizon called, a quilt of cerulean and gold stretched before us, reminding me that journeys of worth often began not in dramatic gestures, but in the quiet acknowledgement of self and the choices it compelled. With James at my side, I embraced the open road, heart unshackled, ready for whatever lay beyond. Chapter 46. The Cost of Truth. "What are we really doing here, Sheila?" James's voice wove through the sea breeze, the words scattered as pebbles do when tossed into a still pond. The question hung vulnerably between us, a fragile filament tethering our contrived engagement to the deeper riddle of truth lurking beneath. We stood on the stony veranda of our borrowed refuge, the whitewashed stone cool beneath my bare feet, the crisp scent of lemongrass oil teasing the air from an unseen burner. A slice of moonlight painted the horizon, where the ocean's tranquil expanse merged imperceptibly with the indigo night. The island offered a sanctuary removed from the tangles of my previous life, yet in this strange new wilderness, I grappled with the relentless scrutiny of my own heart. "You've asked me a question I can't answer," I said softly, a faint tremor voicing my hesitation. The device of our circumstance, our fictitious betrothal to shield the truth of James's lineage, mirrored the internal chasm against which I wrestled each whisper of longing, every uprising of doubt. I watched him, reading the subtleties of tension that drew angular lines of determination across his forehead. This man who had become the axis around which my confounding emotions revolved. James's gaze shifted toward the garden, where lavender hedges swayed gently in concert with the rhythmic cadence of the tide. He folded his arms across his chest, his stature resolute against the uncertainties that encroached from every side. The quiet weight of his presence offered an untold comfort, the space between us filled with unspoken concord. "I think you can answer it," he countered, his voice a tranquil surge that held a question and an answer within the syllables. A gentle breeze wove through the garden, stirring the dark leaves of an ebony orchid, a rare inheritance of this secluded paradise, and a bittersweet aroma pervaded the air. The scent tugged a stubborn memory from its depths. It was the scent of my awakening. "What is there to say?" I replied, feigning lightness that quickly dissipated in the pregnant silence between us. The truth was a delicate creature, restless and agitated beneath layers of choices made too early, desires repressed too long. Here, at the edge of an unfolding horizon, I felt the stirring of an ancient longing, one bidding me toward an uncharted course. James stepped closer, the quiet rustle of the foliage punctuating his measured approach. "We have an understanding," he stated, his voice laced with a certainty that both unnerved and grounded me. Yet understanding is not always enough. I turned my eyes to the stars that carpeted the sky, their celestial constancy a stark contrast to the turbulence within me. The thrumming allure of an unspoken promise lingered between us, a magnetic persuasion daring us to step beyond the boundaries of convenience and pretense. "Is honesty ever truly simple?" I mused, articulating aloud the tightly wound revelation thrumming just beneath my skin. The moonlight played across James's features, illuminating the resolute lines of his face, imbuing him with an enigmatic grace. "Truth is rarely simple," he conceded, and for a breathless moment his eyes locked onto mine, a silent inquiry pulsing beneath his steady gaze. I felt the unguarded vulnerability of the gesture wash over me, his gaze like the precision of a master sculptor, chipping away the extraneous layers surrounding the marbled core of my being. "I fear," I whispered, struggling against the tightening coil of my own trepidation, "that the truth will cost us everything." James tilted his head slightly, catching fragmented moonbeams in the depths of his eyes. "Or," he said gently, "it may set us free." The ocean's distant rhythm thrummed a persistent harmony, its measured symphony serenading the secession of my doubts. James stood beside me, our shoulders brushing with the barest suggestion of intimacy, a modest contact that ignited electricity whirls between our two solitary worlds. It was a touch laden with significance, both innocent and commanding in its impact, as though binding us in an agreement formed beyond spoken word. Again, silence wrapped around us, a gauzy veil spun by the spectral hands of the breeze. In that holy silence, my heart laid bare its secret longings, a glimpse of possibility, shorn of deception. "Perhaps," I replied, a half-smile lifting the corners of my mouth, responding to the boldness of his certainty. A gust carried the scent of rain, mingled with the salt brine air, a cleansing elixir that uncoiled the immodest tensions of past falsities from within my heart. Perhaps, James. He nodded, a softened expression replacing the furrowed scrutiny of moments before. We'll face it together, he asserted. Conviction traced along the curve of his lips, a vow as binding as any promise made under sun-kissed skies. Together, the implication of his assurance imbued the night with a profound luminescence. It was a buoy, tethered to hope, casting a beacon upon the shadows of my hesitations. In the dim, steadfast glow of our unspoken understanding, I felt courage stir in my chest, a congenital yearning toward a destiny bared by truth's fervent light. As we lingered there on the precipice of possibility, a shared resolve formed, coalesced from hope and vulnerability entwined. To speak as though free, to love as though unashamed, that was the cost of truth, sublime in its totality. And so, beneath the cosmos's interminable expanse, with the wild siren call of our untold longing echoing through the night, I reached for James's hand, a simple act, yet resplendent with the boundless promise of our uncharted journey. In that singular, infinite moment, the truth became both the challenge and the liberation. Here, on this island of secrets and skyward dreams, I whispered the longing, laden with equal parts fear and faith. I choose us. Chapter 47, Binding Agreements. The island air hung about us like a soft embrace, redolent with the tang of salt and the musk of sun-warmed earth. Each breath I took seemed infused with the notes of hibiscus and the sea's wild whisper, a symphony that underscored the tumult in my chest. I found solace and contradiction in the secrecy of this place, its beauty at odds with the burden of pretense that weighed upon us. James walked beside me through the sand that glowed golden in the fading light. Trees swayed languidly under the gentle oppression of the breeze, their leaves a chorus of rustling secrets. The sound mirrored our own unspoken thoughts, a constant murmur between what was said and unsaid, a language we had learned only too well, yet yearned to transcend. For a fleeting moment, I considered everything that had led to our being here, a make-believe betrothal designed to deceive, yet in its deceptive embrace, we found shards of something truer than our own constructed realities. The world we'd fabricated felt fragile, and yet curiously liberating, a paradox of longing and restraint. As we reached a secluded spot near the edge of the palms, I couldn't help but steal a glance at him. Deep in thought, James's expression was stern and tender all at once, a face carved by countless secrets born with dignity. The shadows chiseled by the descending sun accentuated the contradictions within him, both regal and elusive, a guardian of mysteries with eyes that promised revelation and warmth. Here might be a good place to sit, he suggested, his voice a rich baritone, grounding me in the moment, even as my thoughts flitted, unmoored, like leaves caught in a storm. I nodded, the wordless accord between us intense and serene. Settling against the trunk of a palm, the bark rough against my back, I watched as he reclined beside me. For a brief, unwelcome instant, an ache coursed through me, a phantom of uncertainty, a consequence of bonds stretched but not quite severed. "Do you ever wonder?" he began, his gaze not on me, but stretching out toward the horizon where the sky kissed the infinite expanse of water. "If our agreements bind us to the truth more than they do to our roles?" His question hung in the air, its resonance sharp against the ambient melody of life around us. I hesitated, not out of reticence, but to savor the weight of inquiry, so rarely voiced, yet ever present. "I think," I started, tracing a finger along the grains of sand that warmed beneath the decaying sunlight, "that binding is not necessarily constricting. It might liberate, paradoxically." A small pause lapped between us, like the rhythmic curling of waves. His eyes flickered, an ember fanned by the gust of vulnerability, a revelation unique in its unexpectedness. "And what binds you, Sheila? Is it the vows, or is it more?" His voice, though steady, carried the timbre of genuine curiosity beneath its layers. a rare exposure that momentarily unraveled the serenity he so carefully cultivated. I turned to face him, startled by the fragility of his question, the intensity with which he awaited my truth. "It's the vows," I acknowledged, "but it is also the unspoken, the desires never quite dared, the promise whispered only within my own heart." James held my gaze, and in that charged silence, a dozen bindings tightened and fell away. Here there was no deceit, only a blooming understanding that transcended the barriers we had both erected. "They have a way of evolving, don't they, these unspoken promises?" His voice was a tender caress, a kindling curiosity that was gentle, probing, without demand. "Sometimes I think they are the only ones that never disappoint," I admitted, marveling at how easily truth threaded its way between us in this oasis of mirage and reality. He reached for my hand then, a deliberate action filled with the weight of uncountable exchanges, unvoiced sentiments that existed without the need for illumination. Our fingers, woven together, spoke a volume of shared resolve, a declaration masked beneath layers of familiarity and discovery. "Do we dare redefine what binds us?" he asked, his words tinged with the undertone of a challenge that was neither ignored nor underestimated. "Our definitions have always been more complex than any declaration," I replied, leaning into the symmetry of resolve that neither of us shirked from. "Perhaps binding is a choice, a courageous one, given when you strip away everything else." He smiled then, softly, as if acknowledging an unspoken truth. "I think this." He gestured to the expanse around us, to the island itself. "This is the space where everything true is undisturbed by illusion. Let's honor it." The commitment in his words bore the gravity of intention, a pact not of circumstance but of profound belief. I nodded, reluctant to break the fragile spell of resolve, recognizing in his eyes the mirror of my own quiet resolve. Here, under the witnessing canopy of palm leaves, we were bound by more than pretense, engaged not only in a flamboyant forgery, but in the precipice of genuine transformation. And as the sea swallowed the sun in a final, radiant embrace, James whispered words that mirrored the clarity of our unbinding. "In this shared truth, Sheila, we find the strength to redefine everything." A realization settled over me, steady and unwavering as the soil upon which we rested, that in engaging with him thus, I uncovered more than a new, daring promise. It was the commencement of a journey into myself, into wanting what had always lain just beyond the horizons of self-imposed obligation. "Let it be so," I whispered, an echoing vow to the world we were destined to redefine, moment by honest moment. In this gentle binding, I found an adventure of spirit and soul that dared me to question every constraint, yet boundlessly gifted me with the courage to explore anew. For in our unspoken reckonings, I find the sealing of my longing, released, rewritten, unbounded. Chapter 48, Secrets and Sacrifices. The first light of dawn wrestled gently with the remnants of the night, casting soft hues over the rolling ocean waves that cradled the island. A serene tranquility belied the storm roiling inside me. As I stood at the water's edge, the sea's salty breeze whispered warmly through the strands of my hair. Yet even this peaceful backdrop could not ease the tangled knots of choices and emotions I harbored within. It was here, amidst nature's majesty, that I felt both infinitesimal and breathtakingly alive. The sunrise stretched across the horizon, promising new beginnings, and I gravitated toward its hope. My feet sank slightly into the cool sand, anchoring me in the present as thoughts of past decisions and future uncertainties danced in my mind. The sun itself seemed to rise with deliberation, its ascent slow and contemplative, as if aware of the gravity of its golden promise hanging in the gauzy morning air. James approached from behind, his presence as familiar as my own shadow. His gait was unhurried, each step a testament to his quiet confidence. He did not deign to stir the placid morning with unnecessary words. Instead, he settled beside me, silent yet speaking in volumes. We stood like that, side by side, the ocean stretching infinitely before us. The proximity was almost palpable. The very space between us seemed charged with unsaid words and unmade decisions. I glanced at him, trying to decode the slight furrow in his brow and the dark eyes that held worlds of stories, stories that he kept as close-guarded mysteries. James was as formidable as the sea itself, full of undiscovered depths and unexpected currents. His profile was etched against the amber dawn, a silhouette of strength, intermingled with vulnerability he allowed only me to glimpse. His hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch that sent sparks through my skin, a gentle reminder of our secretive dance, the delicate yet unyielding bond we both cherished and dreaded. In that innocent contact was the weight of the universe, each pulse echoing with impossible possibilities and solemn sacrifices. Hard to keep pretending, isn't it? His voice was a low rumble, gentle yet resonant, drawing thoughts from the depths I preferred remain unspoken. I nodded, the movement slight against the vast tableau. Yet it spoke of the internal tide that had shifted within me, recognizing the authenticity lurking beneath the facade we had donned. The pretending feels more real than reality, I confessed, my voice barely louder than a whisper against the ocean's symphony. James tilted his head slightly, and in that moment, our eyes met, a convergence of secrets and silent understanding. In his gaze, I saw my own reflection, a person both familiar and foreign, poised at the precipice of a new truth. His gaze did not falter, steady as the sunrise. "Are you ready, Sheila, to stop pretending?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. My heart surged, a rapid crescendo echoing the rhythm of the waves. There was no simple answer, no clear path. Every road was fraught with sacrifice, with the unraveling of carefully stitched narratives. Yet standing beside him, the horizon limitless before us, I understood that acknowledging the truth was the first step, one that I could not take alone. "I don't know what awaits us, James," I said, the conviction in my voice surprising even myself. "But I know that we have to face whatever it is, together." He nodded, slowly, the shadows of our pasts momentarily slipping away to reveal moments of unspoken tenderness. The realization settled over me, profound in its simplicity, that in his companionship, a sanctuary for my once stifled spirit had been found. James, ever enigmatic, offered nothing more than a thoughtful silence. But within that silence, there was a promise that the burdens of secrets shared would somehow transform into something lighter, manageable. The island, once an idyllic escape, now felt like a crucible, a place where truths would be forged in the quiet fires of morning light, where decisions loomed like the tides, both endless and inevitable. The very air brimmed with change, an energy that suggested possibilities could be rewoven into the patterns of our lives. "It's not just about us, Sheila," James reminded gently, the richness of his timbre vibrating with understanding. "What we choose will ripple beyond just you and me." Though he did not elaborate, the gravity of his words settled heavily, and yet underneath, like bedrock, there was hope. Hope that decisions made in the purity of morning light might somehow stand resilient against the storm clouds that gathered on the periphery of our understanding. "We can't know all the ripples," I agreed, turning my gaze once more to the burgeoning day. "But we can choose with courage, can't we?" He turned to face me then, the earnestness in his eyes belonging to someone unmasked, exposed yet unafraid. "With courage," he affirmed, an oath sealed in mutual trust. A breeze stirred, lifting and carrying the echo of this exchange with it, as if the island itself bore witness to our evolving resolve. The ocean continued its rhythm, indifferent and everlasting, and thus under the still rising sun the dawn of our choices began to unfurl, promising transformations both monumental and minute. We stood there, devoted and disparate, poised to reshape the narratives we had long sojourned within, prepared now to forge our paths anew. In this serene and shared silence, I finally understood. Both of us were ready to embrace whatever may come, grounded in the trust that would guide us through all that lay ahead. It was this certainty, delicate yet abiding, with which the morning momentarily inscribed its magic upon us, promising that light would follow even the darkest nights. Chapter 49, Confrontation's Aftermath. "What are you afraid of, Sheila?" James's voice pierced through the tension that cloaked the narrow wooden pathway leading deeper into the island's verdant heart. The air hung heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth, punctuated by the distant rumble of an indifferent sea. His question lingered, a soft echo against the backdrop of rustling palm fronds, only half audible as the wind carried it away. I paused, my fingers tracing the moist bark of a banyan tree, its roots meandering like veins through the dark soil. The storm had rolled in swiftly, bringing with it invisible boundaries laid bare under the flash of lightning. Each drop of rain was a cool touch against my skin, grounding and persistent. What was I afraid of? The question seemed endless in its simplicity, like a vast ocean waiting to be crossed. James's presence at my side felt like both a tether and a temptation, a constant reminder of paths not taken. I turned to face him, the wind tousling his hair into charming disarray. His eyes, deep, thoughtful pools that masked so much behind their glint, searched mine for truths I did not yet know how to articulate. "Everything and nothing," I replied finally, the words tasting of salt and hesitation, afraid of what might change, and at the same time, what might never change. He nodded, as if the riddle was somehow an answer in itself. A rare sunbeam broke through the dense canopy above, casting a fleeting golden glow upon us, delicate and ephemeral. It was this kind of light that transforms shadows into something precious, and for a brief moment, vulnerability did not feel so much like a threat, but an intimate freedom. "You don't have to be afraid," James said, taking a step closer, his voice low, coaxing, not an assurance, but an invitation. His hand brushed against mine, a deliberate, gentle touch that spoke volumes beyond the confines of speech. That contact, light yet undeniable, was electric in its purity. The world seemed to narrow, focused solely on the silent dialogue of our touch. It promised nothing, yet withheld nothing either. Together we moved along the path, our steps a quiet syncopation to the island's rhythmic pulse. The boundary between our pretended engagement and this burgeoning truth wavered like the horizon in stormy seas. It struck me that our game of deception, what had begun as a mere diversion, now served only to deepen my conviction that the life mapped out for me was no longer the path I wished to follow. "Why did you agree to this?" I found myself asking, the question escaping before I fully grasped the weight of it. "To this whole charade." James halted, his gaze sweeping the landscape, as if searching for his answer among the tangled roots and swaying palms. The silence stretched, unanswered, yet alive with the unsaid things that thickened the air between us. "Appearances," he answered finally, and though his smile was wry, his eyes held sincerity. "To protect something beyond myself, and to gain something more than what I left behind. I've been hiding in plain sight for too long, and giving shape to expectations that aren't my own. But with you," he paused, his voice faltering, "this is different." The rain began to fall with renewed fervor, slanting diagonally across the path, each drop a crystal that shattered upon the ground. We found refuge under the expansive limbs of a sprawling mango tree, the leaves offering a fragile shield against the growing storm. Beneath this canopy, I felt the solidity of my fear erode, washed away by the deliberate stride of each raindrop. The world outside this verdant haven faded into a distant noise, leaving only the persistent drumming of my heart to contend with the whispered symphony of rainfall. "And you?" he asked, his voice a soft thread cutting through the rain's gentle susurration. "What do you gain, Sheila, from any of this?" His eyes, reflective pools, held fast to mine, their depth daring me to plunge below the surface of my own misgivings. A shiver coursed through me, less from the chill of encroaching night, and more from the vulnerability our conversation conjured. "Courage, perhaps," I whispered, nearly to myself. "The courage to confront those things I've long ignored, to face my own desires without guilt." The confession was a release, a crystallization of my internal tumult. The life I had tried so carefully to uphold now seemed an ill-fitting relic, tarnished by the weight of inauthenticity. In James's company, I glimpsed a version of myself undefined by duty alone, a version born from want, not obligation. His expression softened, and though he did not speak, the understanding that simmered between us was rich and complicated, filling the spaces where words dared not venture. With a warmth that defied the chill, he took my hand in his own, anchoring us to this newfound candor. Beyond the hungry sighs of the storm, the island itself seemed to breathe with relief, the air fragrant with the untamed life it sustained. Here, amidst the anonymity of wildness, I felt the exhaustion of indecision yield to something bolder. I watched as the last vestiges of sunlight flickered out, the attempted assertion of the storm dimming the day's brilliance to a dusky rest. And in that tranquil twilight, the past receded, leaving the present amplified in its clarity. James's fingers tightened ever so subtly around mine, a silent pledge of solidarity in the face of uncertainty. In that gesture, I found a promise equal parts fragile and fierce. It was both a blessing and a burden of choice, and it was entirely mine. What now? The question left my lips a whisper, laden with hope and a hint of fear. His response was but a breath, almost consumed by the roar of approaching night. Yet it stirred something profound within me. Whatever we choose. And in that moment, I knew that the end of one path had given birth to infinite beginnings, all tinted with the reckless possibility of freedom. Chapter 50. The Delicate Suspension. The ocean was more a whisper than a roar this morning. It unfurled gently against the shore, each wave a soft punctuation to the silence that enveloped me. I found myself tracing the course of its rhythmic ebb and flow, hypnotized by the promise wrapped in its constancy. The horizon, a faint blur between azure sea and powder blue sky, seemed an uncharted expanse, identical to the disarray of my heart. Here, everything appeared boundless, as if suspending reality could hold truths yet unsaid. There was solitude in this moment, a solitude I clung to, despite everything unraveling around me. The heaviness of choices yet to be made hovered close, an indistinct shadow that swayed with the wind. This island, with its emerald foliage and crystalline sands, had become both sanctuary and precipice, daring me to leap into the unknown. A rustle behind me, the soft crush of leaves beneath deliberate footsteps, interrupted my solitude. I knew without turning it was him. His presence, commanding yet understated, filled the space before he even spoke. James stood beside me, his essence as intoxicating as the salt-kissed air. A presence in tune with mine, yet distinct, creating subtle ripples in the quietude surrounding us. I felt the pull of his gaze, deep and searching, as profound as the ocean that stretched before us. It was in these silent exchanges that our truths nestled, shared through the simplicity of being, transcending the need for words. "We have to address the press soon," he finally murmured, his voice a rich timbre that melded with the sea breeze. He didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the distant waves, mirroring the uncertainty that pervaded my own thoughts. The weight of his statements suspended between us, an uninvited echo of reality's intrusion into our crafted escape. Even as we played our parts, This charade of an engagement, each day seemed to strip layers away, revealing raw hopes that had begun to take root between us. Yet there was a fragile balance in our dance, a careful navigation of unspoken boundaries. "I know," I replied, my voice softer than intended, yet laden with unarticulated dilemmas. "But not just yet." I turned then, meeting his gaze. It was there in the shadowed depths of his eyes that I saw a reflection of my own quiet turmoil, a yearning laced with the apprehension of change. He nodded, the ghost of a smile tugging briefly at his lips. There was reassurance in his acceptance, a silent promise that whatever winds might buffet us, we would weather them together. This facade, though built of necessity and untruths, bound us nonetheless in ways both unforeseen and profound. "How long can we keep this going?" I asked, more to myself than him, the whisper almost drowning amidst the wind. What began as a diversion was now a precipice laden with consequences, and though we stood upon it, hand in hand, I feared the price of our leap. His silence spoke volumes, an echo of my unvoiced fears, an acknowledgement of roads yet unwalked. James's presence was a balm, his calm resolve a linchpin around which my tumultuous world spun. And yet, even amidst our closeness, there was a distance, a march towards an inevitable end, either of freedom or of despair. "Until we don't have to." His response was as enigmatic as the man himself, layered with both hope and finality. The answer held weight. It was at once liberation and restraint, albeit peculiarly comforting. Our moments stretched, holding us in a suspension of time, just the two of us, cocooned in shared stillness. The warmth of the sun was unrelenting yet gentle, casting golden hues that danced across the sand and caught in James's hair, painting everything in a fleeting glimmer of serenity. I felt his hand close over mine, strong and steady, a simple gesture that anchored me amidst my tumult. His touch conveyed resolve, unspoken resolve to protect and to stand despite the chaos converging on us. It was this indefinable connection that lent courage, a tether which bound us in trust deeper than any proclamation could. Looking back towards the horizon, I saw not just the approaching storm of our revelation, but the swell of something greater, a shared journey that neither of us had chosen, but both had embraced. Our love hung balanced on a precipice of what could be, suspended in this delicate, inevitable dance. The island, vast and untouched, bore witness to the quiet peace we shared, a haven where illusions could momentarily become reality, where desires paused in tentative suspension. Everywhere was the allure of light, mingling with shadow, potential twined with the familiar ache of expectation. As the waves continued their ceaseless chant, I felt a burgeoning within me, an acceptance of the unknown and the promise it held. The illusion might be grand, the stakes high, but the journey we embarked on together held its own tender allure. Perhaps, in the delicate balance of love and deception, we would find what we never sought, an emancipation far beyond the shores of pretense. "Whatever comes, Sheila, we face it together." His voice, a steadying force, carried through the wind, stripping away the veil of doubt that had settled over me. I squeezed his hand, a silent affirmation that our path, onerous yet exhilarating, was ours alone to forge. In the gentle cadence of the ocean, beneath the sprawling expanse of sky, it was there our truth resided, between what was and what lay just beyond our reach. Anchored yet free, in the spaces where silence spoke and love barely dared to whisper, our journey awaited. As the first star dared to punctuate the twilight, casting its light over our shared horizon, I felt the gravity of an opportunity yet unrealized. That in the stillness of the night, we might finally find our own reflection in each other, no longer reflected by the sea, but by the promise wrought into being by our shared resolve. And amidst the abiding tranquility of our island refuge, a hopeful truth emerged, as constant and timeless as the oceans themselves. "We face it together," I echoed, "in acceptance and in hope, our pact sealed beneath the starlit sky." Chapter 51: A Night of Reckoning. What if everything we believe about who we are is not who we could be? James's voice threaded through the shadows between us, a whisper barely daring to disturb the humid night air that cradled the island. The question lingered like an unending echo, and in its wake, I felt as if the world had held its breath. The crescent moon spilled light tenderly across the beach, transforming the sand into a sea of tiny diamonds. My bare feet sank slightly, grounding me in a moment that seemed mercurial and tethered at once. The ocean murmured a steady lullaby, while the scent of salt mingled with the fragrant, lilting song of night-blooming jasmine. It was a paradise on the surface, concealing the turbulence just beneath, much like us. I took a moment to consider his words, their gravity pulling at my deepest fears, and yet stirring something hopeful within. The isle wrapped its cloak of warm breezes around our secluded corner, secretive and watchful, as if in complicity with our clandestine engagement. "You mean us," I replied, my voice steady despite the trepidation that clawed at my tranquility. My eyes sought his, finding them an abyss of mystery that I had yet to fully explore. James was enigmatic, a man crafted of unending depths and intricate layers. The longer I looked, the more I saw potential galaxies waiting to unfold. His nod was nearly imperceptible, but potent with the weight of unexpressed truths. He ran a hand through his tight curls, a habitual motion that betrayed a flicker of vulnerability. Here, in this embrace of night, he seemed less the impervious curator and more human, a man battling an invisible tempest within. Overhead, the stars seemed shamelessly bright, carrying unspeakable witness to our private reckoning. I felt them watching, as if urging me toward a revelation I had long resisted. It was here, in James's presence, the concealments of our pasts clashed with the integrity of our desires. I could no longer ignore the fissures in my life, or in myself. Would it all unravel if we tried? I mused aloud, dipping gently into the pool of candor that stretched between us. I was both hesitating and daring, leaping into the unknown that James somehow promised to navigate by my side. "The world," he replied, "the world seeks to define us, but only we decide how to live." His tone was vibrant, with a certainty that both anchored and disarmed me. Here was a man who wielded authority with grace, a man of royal lineage burdened with the weight of a secret that had the power to dismantle our fragile present. "But what do you want truly?" I probed, desperation trickling into each word. Beneath my question lay another, more urgent inquiry. What did I want? His gaze softened, a curious amalgamation of resolve and tenderness. "I want what cannot be stolen or lost, a love that honors our truth, unburdened by the masks we wear." In that instant, we were no longer conspirators in a charade constructed to shield his identity. We became two people stripped bare by authenticity, unconcealed by shadows. The island offered solitude, a canvas as pristine as the dawn that would inevitably follow this night. A silence sprawled between us, dense and electric. I found myself daring to press my thoughts into speech, echoing a courage newly rekindled. "James, my marriage, it's become a hollow vow, a barrier built of deception. Yet I fear the ruins that will follow its collapse." His hand, gentle yet firm, found its place on mine, and this simple connection sparked an undeniable recognition of the partnership we imagined, one abounding with the possibility of unguarded tenderness rather than the calculation of pretense. "We are all architects of our destructions and salvations," he murmured, and I was reminded mysteriously of his own delicate balance of power and temerity. But shackles cannot withstand the desires of the relentless heart. At his words, I envisioned the ramifications of my choices. the inevitable fracturing and reforging of my world. Could a daring trust in him, in us, transform what was once broken into the wondrous? I turned to the horizon, where the sea met sky in an endless communion. This island, with its unyielding serenity, seemed at that moment to encompass a promise larger than any oath ever sworn within marble walls or beneath solemn arches. "I want this," I uttered, my voice tremulous yet resolute. And in that confession, I felt myself cross an invisible threshold. A surrender not to James alone, but to a future unburdened by duplicity. James offered no response, only a look that reaffirmed our covenant. It was a pact silently forged with the strength of self-conviction and the gentle force of love, acknowledged under constellations that seemed to nod in approval. His closeness was a balm, the warmth of his proximity resonating against the coolness of the night. We stood poised at the precipice of a new morning, the threads of our fates intertwined and taut with promise. A sudden gust sent a shiver through me, causing the waves to momentarily roar against the shore. In their wake, I felt a new heartbeat, steady, assured, a rhythm synchronized with the breath of the island, with James's calming presence. I understood then, with clarity buoying my spirit, that what lay ahead was not merely a crossroads of our own making. It was a reclamation of desires once shackled, an unfurling of a truth concealed yet radiant. A truth that, like our shared night, would outshine any morning to come. And so we lingered, together on this bastion of solitude, two souls alight with the embers of kindling hope, whispering to the star-splattered sky above a silent vow of our own composing. I am ready to become who I am meant to be. As dawn's gentle fingers began to paint the horizon with hues of promise, I whispered, more to myself than to him, captured in the assurance that world and heart alike need not unravel. We can redefine everything. Chapter 52, Silent Labyrinths of Love. The early morning sun filtered through the tall jacaranda trees, its light splintered by the entwined branches that formed a natural lattice above my head. I wandered into the garden, a crimson silk scarf in my hand. Folding and unfolding it slowly, the fabric whispered secrets against my skin as a gentle breeze carried the scents of jasmines and damp earth. There was work to be done, a chore that seemed banal yet fraught with significance. I was to arrange the flowers for the dinner table, a task that rooted me in something tangible amid the whirlwind of artifice surrounding us. With each stem I repositioned, I felt the weight of encroaching sentiment. Here, on this private island, where the ocean whispered confidences to the sands and the horizon harbored its mysteries, my facade with James as his intended seemed simultaneously fragile and irrevocably binding. I had grown accustomed to the delicate dance of our public deception, yet within the sanctuary of our borrowed roles, a truth vibrant and unrelenting unfurled silently between us. James approached from the edge of the garden, his presence a subtle shift in the air, palpable before his shadow touched the soil beside mine. He wore an expression of thoughtful repose, a rare moment when his formidable charisma retracted, displaying the man beneath the mantle. Without a word, he took a gladiolus from my hand, inspecting it as though its beauty hid a riddle only he could unravel. Under the canopy of purple blooms, the shared quiet between us felt like an unspoken promise. Gladiolus, he said, the word heavy with the assurance of one who had learned much from the natural world. Strength of character, integrity, infatuation, depending on who you ask. His eyes met mine, deep and fathomless like the sea surrounding our secluded world. Again, words unsaid spoke volumes. His gaze lingered on me, as if tracing the arch of questions and answers that hovered in the air between us, coiling like the sea breeze that tousled tendrils of my hair. I chuckled softly, trying to anchor myself with levity. Then it's fitting for us, an ongoing testament to our enigma. He smiled, a quiet amusement tempered by an undertone I could not easily dissect. Perhaps, though a labyrinth often has an unexpected exit. A familiar tension crackled in the space his statement carved. Trapped within the mazes of our performing lives, was there not a path that led beyond the hollow echoes of empty engagements and half-truths? I wondered if he sensed my resolve, floundering beneath the weight of choice and chance. My heart wrestled with the cadence of surrender and discovery, tethering itself to possibilities just now cresting into view. Our silence ripened, filled by the murmurs of the island, each moment an etched hypothesis of what might be. James reached over, and his fingertips grazed the back of my hand, an echo of the currents that ran both visible and unseen. His touch whispered what neither of us dared voice, a promise stronger than any vow forged in ritual. Here, there were no witnesses but the earth and sky, and perhaps that was all we ever needed. This place, it holds who we are, he mused, sweeping the garden with contemplative regard. The open wistfulness of his tone, a disparity to the fierce complexity that lay beneath. We are free here, perhaps freer than we've ever been. The air carried the faintest hint of salt, an elemental reminder of isolation and togetherness. Each inhalation infused a susceptibility that tethered my senses and wrought an indelible imprint. On this island, we were sovereign beings, merely remade by the grace of discretion and truth. Yet it weighed heavy upon me that what dared blossom here might wither upon re-entry into the world beyond the shore. Free in deception, perhaps, I replied, my voice tempered by a tenderness not meant to wound. But in honesty, I feel shackled by truths we've yet to speak. Words extinguished, we took solace in the chorus that rustled through the garden, a deeper language composed not of syllables, but of moments, bound to the enigmatic code of our shared presence. The weight of his gaze persisted, imploring even as it consoled. An understanding coursed between us, an equation consisting of factors neither of us dared solve prematurely. As the island sun ascended, it cast jagged shadows across the pebbled path leading back into the opulent villa, a reflection of the stark choices lying before me. Like the labyrinths James alluded to, I wondered if love was merely an intricate puzzle, a series of maneuvers that comprised an uncertain journey with a potential for discovery beyond the anticipated outcome. Yet in this silent garden, where time meandered outside its usual bounds, I embraced the allure of choice, cradling the luxury of vulnerability as a precursor to strength. In James, in myself, in the silent labyrinths of love that enveloped us, I found a possibility worth contemplating. Leaning into the weighty question mark I had become, I lifted the final bloom and placed it among its virtuous companions. Then let us see where this path leads. And in James's returning smile, I glimpsed the promise of what awaited when paths intertwine under such ardent whispers. Sure, here's a chapter that fits the provided criteria. Chapter 53, Looming Shadows. A soft, muted glow pressed through the canopy of palm leaves, dappling the earth beneath with ephemeral patterns. Above, the sky shapeshifted, a canvas in constant flux, a benevolent blue that teetered on the brink of tempestuous gray. I felt the weight of impending rain pooling in the air, each inhalation heavy and damp, as though the very atmosphere anticipated an upheaval. I leaned against the coarse bark of a tree, closing my eyes to wear the shroud of memory. In the silence, deeper than words, lay the truth I sought to avoid, a longing as relentless as the ocean's pull. My thoughts whispered of continuity, of paths barely taken, and the intoxicating rush that stirred at the mere idea of James's presence. The rustle of leaves nearby drew my attention. James appeared, moving fluidly through the underbrush, shoulders squared, exuding an air of quiet authority. His gaze met mine, and in that look was 1,000 unsaid words, each heavier than the last. I could feel the complexity of our unspoken bond, a delicate weave of secrets and shared glances, fraught with unsolved riddles. The island seemed to hold its breath as he reached me, the sea murmuring in its ceaseless hymn against distant rocks. He held out a hand, not expectantly, but in shared understanding, an offering of solidarity. I took it, feeling the warmth and strength that resided within his palms, grounding me amidst the torrent of my swirling doubts. "The storm's gathering," James remarked, his voice laced with the same tension that hung in the air. "It seems so," I replied, our words a reflection of the internal upheaval we both navigated. How strange it is that the language of weather could so seamlessly express the inner turmoil of the human heart. We walked in tandem, footsteps synchronizing with the rhythmic sigh of the sea, each step a decision, fraught with consequence and revelation, under the shadow of what we dared not name. The path before us wound through thickets dense with vegetation, nature cloaking us in a verdant embrace, a world vibrant, yet teetering on the precipice of chaos. "Do you ever wish you could simply let it all go?" James asked, not looking at me, his eyes fixed somewhere beyond the horizon. The question lingered in the space between us, pregnant with meaning and silent confessions. "More often than you'd believe," I answered, allowing a sliver of vulnerability to bleed into my words. Even as I voiced the thought, the cords of obligation tightened around me, bonds forged in the deceptive sanctity of once promised vows, now rubbed raw against yearning. His hand brushed lightly against my lower back, a fleeting gesture of reassurance, the parting clouds allowing a fragmented promise of light to pierce through, bathing us momentarily in its warmth. I felt the simplest of touches resonate, a vibration deep within my soul, as though that moment alone was a promise. We emerged from the grasp of towering flora, the scene unfolding into a secluded beach where the tide pulled languidly upon the shore, a to and fro mirroring the tides within me. There, the whispers of the ocean reached out, a counsel only James and I could decipher, each syllable laden with the gravity of our shared experiences. James paused, and I mirrored his movement. We stood together at the threshold of uncharted waters, the breeze weaving through our thoughts, as if to bear our deliberations to the world beyond. "What would you do if the truth were known?" I inquired, each word a hesitant brushstroke against the canvas of reality, a painting unwillingly formed. "I would own it," he replied with a quiet determination, a single droplet of certainty in the sea of ambiguity that defined our existence. "It isn't the revelation that frightens me, but the change it demands." The surf danced at our feet, cold and invigorating, a metaphor perhaps for the paradox of stepping into uncertainty, beckoning yet terrifying, a relentless pull towards the unknown. A metaphor for us. Trusting the silence that enveloped our dialogue, James and I stood anchored to each other, shielded from the encroaching tempest by the strength of mere presence. As the waves lapped impatiently at the shore, I felt clarity unfurl like a flower blossoming even amidst the storm. In that space carved by quietude, shadows loomed but dared not suffocate, deferential to the slivers of light that persisted. Within that kernel of understanding, I found something that resembled peace. "I choose this," I said softly, though my voice carried on the wind, a declaration to the forces that sought to claim it from me. His eyes turned, warm and unwavering, met mine, a witness to the confession nested within the simplicity of those words. "And I will stand by it," he promised, not as a condition, but as an affirmation of a journey inevitable. Two souls seeking fulfillment against the looming shadows of what was yet to unfold. And thus we stood, against the storm, amidst truth and its tremors. In this quiet cove, where the world contracted to the simple rhythm of our shared resolve, everything felt significant. A nascent hope, gestating beneath the silent roar of agitation. As the wind unfurled its mighty breath, mingling with our resolve, I knew that choice didn't reside in what others dictated, but in the simple, steadfast assertion of what we deemed necessary. The truth, like the storm, would soon lay bare the confines of pretense we allowed to shelter our desires. And in the end, our choices would decide the rest. If not us, then who will decide the course of our lives? He asked at last, echoing into the fabric of the unfolding dusk, his question blazing an indelible trail across the firmament between heart and horizon. In answer, or perhaps in reassurance, I whispered softly to the night. "No one," I murmured, the echo carried forth by the breeze. And somewhere beyond that shared understanding, an awareness quickened, promising the emergence of new dawn. Chapter 54, Foreseen Challenges. The air was thick with the scent of imminent rain, the kind that clings to your skin and gives breath a heavy quality. The horizon brewed with dark clouds, a velvety blanket rolling to conceal the sun, which peered timidly through small, fleeting gaps. I stood on the veranda, my hands clenching the wooden railing, feeling the pulse of the approaching storm as it matched my own internal unrest. The sea, once a serene partner whispering against the sand, now churned with an agitated rhythm. Salt tinged the air, tangling in my hair, playing havoc with thoughts I had once believed steadfast. Each wave a temporal battleground, fending off whispers of inadequacy, uncertainty. Despite our fabricated engagement, James had become an anchor in a life previously spent adrift. It had been a startling surprise how this facade birthed something undeniably genuine between us. And yet, under saved smiles and unspoken words lay his secret, precariously teetering on revelation, a concealed lineage that bound us tighter than any ring might claim. He emerged now, his presence a steadying force amidst my turmoil. The door clicked softly behind him, announcing his arrival without intrusion. There was a kinetic energy in his stillness, an internal dialogue behind those perceptive eyes that mirrored the turbulent sky. His glance was a shoreline unto itself, a safe harbor, yet suffused with the promise of uncharted depths. "Seems like the heavens are eager to tell tales today," he remarked, coming to stand beside me. His voice was a balm, a subtle vibration below the roiling atmosphere. I considered his words, understanding the weight of what remained unsaid. "They have secrets to unearth," I responded, glancing sidelong at him. "Like some people I know." His lips curved into a half-smile, tempered by the intensity of his gaze. "You have a talent for uncovering what others would leave buried. There is safety in knowledge, James. Don't let secrets drown out truths." He nodded, a silent agreement tracing his eyes across the restless waves. "And with truth comes the fear of vulnerability. How many of us are truly brave enough to embrace that?" Those words settled around us, like the hushed lull that precedes a storm's full rage. I felt the tether between us, a dialogue waiting to unfold, oscillating unsteadily between our unyielding silences. In many ways, the uncertainty of the weather before us mirrored our own precarious path, a journey fraught with foreseen challenges neither of us could withstand alone. "You think we can weather it?" I asked quietly. The question hung suspended in the thickening air, delicately poised on the edge of unspoken understanding. With a deliberate slowness, he covered my hand with his, warmth suffusing through the chill that had settled over my skin. His touch was more than mere comfort. It was a promise, a commitment to facing whatever lay ahead, come tempest or tranquility. "Together," he replied, the single word infused with resonance. There was no embellishment needed, the naked honesty striking a chord deep within me. As we stood there, the storm unleashed its fury, raindrops hammering now against the earth with a fervor that bespoke newfound liberation. It enveloped us in a cleansing cascade, the kind that strips away pretense and polishes surfaces raw with truth. With my eyes closed, I let the rain envelop me, each drop a tiny baptism, a reassurance that in choosing this path, this man, I'd embraced a future wrought with intensity and meaning. Our connection felt rooted now, deep as the ancient sea, ready to withstand the inevitable tides of challenge. James's arm around my shoulders anchored me, our bodies unified beneath the vigorous sky. For a fleeting moment, we were eternal, floating in a pocket of time untouched by the corrosive passage of misunderstandings or fear. The storm was relentless, yet we remained resolute, transfixed by an uncompromising understanding that refused to be fractured by anything as mundane as secrets. I turned towards him then, words of intuition bubbling through to articulate the depth of my resolve. We may encounter shadows at every turn, James, forces intent on fraying the fabric we've woven. But I've never chosen love with a faint heart. And I, never with less than absolute conviction, he countered, gaze steady, like the lighthouse beams piercing the distant brume. The potency of his admission left breath aching in my lungs, exhilarating in its simplicity. His avowal marked an indelible point of acknowledgement, a daring promise only made by those who refuse to retreat in the face of adversity. With purpose and clarity that transcended the elemental chaos around us, we turned to find solace in one another. Embracing the vastness of what lay ahead, I realized the answers had lingered here all along, nested within the resonant drumbeat of our hearts. James pressed a gentle kiss to my temple, his lips a whisper of warmth that spoke more intimately to the quiet promise we'd both chosen to believe in. He pulled back, his smile a tacit expression of alliance, as he caught my eye. "Whatever storms choose to test us, know this, Sheila," he murmured. "There isn't a shadow I wouldn't chase away for you." Buoyed upon his earnest words, I understood the storm, both outside and within, had yet to determine the final contours of our landscape. The storm would pass, and with each other, we would remain. As the rain began to subside, pooling in rivulets that traced pathways across the wooden planks, the fervor of within gently ebbed, replaced by the certainty drawn from a love forged amidst foreseen challenges. Whatever awaited us, I knew there was nothing we couldn't face together. And with a determined heart, clear and unburdened, I faced the future, ready to illuminate the shadows. Chapter 55. The Rival's Game. There are moments when the mind becomes a labyrinth, weaving pathways that lead back to the very heart of discomfort. Such moments intrude upon the tranquility of the soul, unwelcome yet unyielding. Here on this island cocooned by azure seas and tempered breezes, I stand at the precipice of imminent upheaval. James's truth hangs in the balance against our own tenuous idol. The morning carried a tangible stillness, punctuated by the rhythmic lull of waves teasing the white powdered sands. The air is heavy with the fragrance of salt mingled with the earthy perfume of brine, and each inhalation is both a testament to the island's beauty and a reminder of the challenges ahead. James lay beside me, his presence a balm to my restless considerations, his breath a serene cadence amongst the echo of impending decisions. He is both enigmatic and familiar, a paradox that has become the cornerstone of our peculiar union. As I abandon the quietude of our chamber, the villa reveals its stories under an awakening sun. The wooden floors creak with age beneath my feet, a melody of history that speaks volumes where words remain caught in silence. I find him on the veranda, his silhouette composed against a backdrop of vibrant foliage, the light casting a gentle halo around his silhouette. James faces the sea, and though his demeanor exudes tranquility, the set of his shoulders betrays a subtle tension, a hint of the battles he wages inwardly, against a past only he can fully comprehend. I approach with measured steps, the timber releasing soft groans beneath each careful footfall. "It's beautiful this morning," I offer, my voice a gentle intrusion amid nature's harmonious dissonance. His eyes, dark as obsidian and equally profound, flicker towards me with a warmth that is singularly his. "Beauty often conceals its own entanglements," he replies, voice laced with unsaid caution, a reminder that our peace is precarious at best. The pause between us stretches, a silent understanding that what remains unspoken is often the most significant. I settle beside him, our silence charged with dialogue beneath its surface. a dance of unvoiced fears and unyielding loyalty. I had a dream, I say, my gaze tracing the horizon, where the sky embraces the vast ocean. It was both illuminating and confounding. James nods, his attention now riveted, his curiosity piqued by the nuanced undertones of my confession. Dreams are an enigma, mirrors held up to the soul. Perhaps, I concede, feeling the warmth of his presence seeping through the air between us, a comfort amidst uncertain terrains. In my dream, we were in a labyrinth, but we were not alone. Others were there, plotting with shadows, their voices indistinct yet filled with intent. At this, James's expression sharpens, his aura shifting to one of protective vigilance, a facet of his nature that unfurls gently yet assertively, like velvet steel wrapped in nobility's embrace. His fingers brush against mine, a gesture filled with promises both spoken and silent. It seems our rival plays a new game, he muses, each word couched in layers of contemplation and resolute certainty. And we, steadfast together, must unravel his designs before they unravel us. I watch him, reminded of the indomitable strength that lies beneath his sophisticated patina. There is a regal undertone to his posture, an element of command that is neither imposed nor overt. It simply is, intertwined with his history, his secrets. In the fleeting shadow of a palm, the hushed resonance of our predicament resonates, casting the island's serenity into sharp relief against the tension that simmers just beneath its crystalline veneer. Let's retreat to the heart of our sanctuary, James suggests, his tone a blend of urgency and gentleness. Much is at stake, and the sands of loyalty shift underfoot. Our steps echo through the corridor that leads us away from prying eyes, our strides synchronized in purpose and faith. A loyal confidant, the villa becomes our ally, a witness to whispered stratagems and unrevealed truths. Within the sanctum of our room, the walls seem to vibrate with history and anticipation. Each brush of air a testament to the unseen trials of the present. James moves with a silent eloquence, his presence weaving security into the fabric of uncertainty. He studies me, his gaze both reassuring and inquisitive. And I sense the weight of his trust as tangible as the breeze rustling through the lattice screens. In the heart of the challenge lies an opportunity, Sheila. Together, this test becomes our forge. In this crucible, I find a strength I once believed as latent, dormant, yet now awakening. The intricacies of our journey unfold like the pages of an unspoken narrative, each chapter more captivating, more treacherous than the last. We have each other, and that is more than enough. My voice emerges stronger than anticipated, an affirmation of the connection between us. James smiles, a rarity that resonates like a sonnet, while his eyes sing of emerald forests, ancient and vast. Unravel the threads, hold onto the fiber of truth, and know that by my side, your desires, freed and untethered, are safe. His words, crafted with care and whispered with an intensity rooted in sincerity, embroider themselves into the tapestry of our reality. Entangled in these trials, our bond becomes both shield and weapon, an unyielding promise against the discordance of rivalry's game. As dusk approaches, painting the world in hues of amber and deep indigo, we settle into a shared silence shaped by introspection and resolve, ready to confront the adversary hidden within the island's verdant facade. The knout carries with it a symphony of whispers, the language of the island itself, a language we too must learn to articulate if we are to emerge victorious. Our hands entwined, we deliberate beneath a canopy of steadfast stars, the cosmos above, answering unasked questions with constellations.